That's weird. Hmm. Okay. Super weird. Anyway. That finally worked? Good lord. Everything's all sorts weird. All right. Oh, we just have to see where we're at. All right. Cool. What's up, everybody? Hope everybody's having a great time. If you can't hear me, please let me know because I'd really like to know. Hit that thumbs up if you can hear me. Anybody with that thumbs up. I'm also streaming on TikTok and on YouTube. Great times. Anyway, let's get into it, man. My wife is texting me telling me I caved. I don't even know what the hell's going on. Oh, all right. I've got my drinks. I've got my Bible. I'm ready to go, baby. Oh, I need to check my email. Um, didn't like that. That noise was not fun. We are waiting for Chris now. Hey, everybody, how you doing? Hope everybody's doing really good. How's everybody's Friday night going so far? We're just waiting on our guest, and then we'll get there, I promise. For some reason, my camera's really not like any of this. Can you hear me? Sure. That's the thing. Maybe. Ah. Oh, I don't know what I just did. Mm-hmm. There we go. That's fixed. Chris should be here any moment. Do-do-do-do. What's everybody up to? It's Friday. I know you guys are doing something fun. My lovely wife is in here. She's making mistakes already. He should be joining very shortly, I'm hoping. But while he joins, let us look at logos. Logos is a fantastic tool. You have your daily dashboard, has some really helpful videos and stuff to get started. You have an English word study, a bunch of ads, different little things you can do there.
Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how are you? Chris, right?
Chris.
Okay.
Yep.
Nice to meet you.
Appreciate it. Nice to meet you.
So, one, thank you for coming across the apologetics video. I really greatly appreciate the watch.
Yeah, no problem.
And hopefully I didn't butcher it too bad.
Yeah, no, I figured, I guess you're kind of just starting out your channel.
Well, I've gone a couple of different directions. Had a pretty life-changing event that happened about almost 4 years ago now, and it really pushed me back to church and back to God. I was walking a very agnostic slash atheist kind of path, and I'm back after
You're
years
back,
and
huh?
years.
The Holy Ghost brought you back.
Yeah, I kind of got snatched right up.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So yeah, I just found your channel. Like nothing. You just get random feeds.
Yeah.
YouTube will just kind of like throw something random in there every once in a while, and it's like, all right.
Yeah, and it's good to get different perspectives too.
Yeah.
And there's
Well,
I
I like too that it throws smaller channels in there too, because like that's how
oh,
if it
100%.
like I don't actually it's funny, I actually pay more attention to like smaller channels often than the ones that have, like 100,000 subscribers. And
Oh yeah.
I find a lot of those channels like kind of become like, well, for one, a lot of them are like demonetized, and then it's almost like they're like producing for an audience at some point. It's like,
Yeah, and that's I hope I hope I never get that big, to be completely honest. Just being able to give that message to one or two people at a time is a little more impactful and to be tangible, if that
yeah.
makes sense.
Well, it also like, being able to do, and I'm sure, bigger channels do, but do like very specialized topics. And, like there's going to be certain topics that you're just not going to get
Oh, 100%.
hundreds of people watching, like it's just,
And I can see that, in all honesty, in the analytics in YouTube and on Spotify. I can see a vast difference to where the engagement on some things are is much different than the engagement on others.
yeah.
Like if I'm talking about sin, nobody wants to hear that they're bad, obviously. So they get about 10 minutes in and they're like, okay, I'm done with this.
Yeah. But that's the thing. I think you can't be like too influenced by, if because like you're right, it could just be one person that hears it and it matters, or like if you make it like if you try to always, well, what's gonna be popular and what are people gonna listen to? Well, and let's be honest, a lot of people it's they don't really pay full attention to stuff anyway. It's somewhat background. So like people are getting bits and pieces of it, even in the best of days. It's
Oh yeah. I personally, if I can't put my hands on it, I have a really hard time comprehending. So
yeah,
I tell the guys in my men's group all the time, I have to physically touch my Bible to fully
like
understand what
read
I'm reading.
books. Yeah. Oh yeah, I love physical books. So like,
Yeah. They're
like my
dying
wife
though.
was like, yeah. Oh yeah, books are great. Like I still, I do watch a lot of YouTube stuff. Just if like I would say more so too. Like if you read a book, then I will look to see if I can find an interview with the author or something. Like something that's supplements what you're already kind of studying. Or but
Yeah, getting inside the head of the author is pretty important, because
yeah,
you can understand the content, but if you understand the person that wrote it, it brings a
yeah,
whole
yeah,
new level to it.
yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of what like instead of just randomly, because I don't just go to randomly just as an entertainment type. I mean,
Yeah.
once you do that, then you're just clicking on stuff, and that it's all, it's not like systematized. If you really go out, okay, I'm looking for this subject.
Yeah, I was honestly kind of worried when I was looking back through our emails earlier today, and I was like, man, hope I didn't offend him with asking where his worldview came from.
Oh no, I'm like, I don't honestly even know if I could be offended. Like people ask me, like, you can't offend me. I'm not easily offended.
Well, I
Like
was just
yeah,
reading into context. I was like, well, these questions lead me to one of two things, because
yeah,
I mean, you weren't a Jehovah's Witness or a Mormon
right.
or a Unitarian. You were not a modalist, not an Arianist. You weren't a vast array. I was like, man, the only two things it could be is Muslim or atheist slash
See,
agnostic.
and I don't mind sharing like my personal religious views, but often like I find if I get too, I can sometimes sidetrack it, and then it's like I don't mind it. Like it's not something, but like I kind of look at it like I'm looking at Christianity from a like historical, critical lens.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like I could just as well be a Christian doing the same. You know, like so now my questions, and like when we talk, I'll push back, and it may be, well, a Christian wouldn't push back like that,
I
or
fully
wouldn't have
expect a
that
Christian should.
presupposition. But like I think you can be critical, and like again, I'm not an atheist, so my presupposition is not that the supernatural doesn't exist and God doesn't exist. I don't start at all from that starting point.
Well, that makes the conversation that
I
much
mean, in
easier, though.
fact, I enjoy the fact that, like, one thing I would say I can relate to Christians better is they do accept a supernatural point of view. And you know what I mean? Like, to me, it's actually boring talking with atheists and, who are just materialists and like,
I
I don't really
100% agree.
I have nothing really to, we may share some views similar as far as like, again, examining something critically, but I don't think that necessarily is limited to an atheist, like.
And in all honesty, I think that's the most fun part about the direction I come at from it is I'm a very scientific, very tangible person. I need evidence. I don't believe in blind faith. I think blind faith is very dumb, and that's what led me away from Christianity when I was a teenager. The evidence that has been put before me and my personal experience has changed my entire outlook on life. So I love looking at the evidence from a historical standpoint. I'm a history nerd. So
Yeah. So that might be a good starting point. And this is where I have to, because like, and no one really takes offense to it, but sometimes I do have to start like, I, I'm going to be honest. I don't know that Christianity can fully be understood from a rational scientific point of view. Like I think, and I'm within the Christian worldview, I'd argue that that's like, if you read Paul, he says this is something that's foolishness to the Gentiles, right? A stumbling block to the Jews. He really says flat out that it's foolishness to the world. And so the way I read that is the world's going to look at Jesus being crucified as that's foolishness, right? That's not
yeah.
even within a religious context, that's not what the Messiah came to do.
Well, and that's
the opposite of what the Messiah came to do, right? So Paul's
yeah.
saying, like, right off the bat, this is not something that you're going to be able to, from a rational worldview, say, okay, this really makes sense, right? It's flipping it kind of on its head. But then it's even further than that, because Paul talks about that, the Jews are blind to even understanding their own scriptures, right? Like, when he talks about how Moses came off the mountain and the Jews really didn't even understand their own scripture, that they were blinded, and
right.
their hearts were hardened. And this theme goes on even into the Gospels, where Jesus says he tells parables not to help those understand. It's actually so that they don't turn and come to the faith, right? So there's this idea in Christianity that it's not perceived in a rational, hey, just lay out the facts for me and I'll understand.
I think
it's the opposite, I would say.
I think Christianity has its own branches in it as well to reach different people. You have historicity, which there are undeniable historical facts that have happened. One of which being the crucifixion of Christ. And actually, I can branch all three around these on the crucifixion and resurrection. So you've got historicity, which is the easy tangible. It's the thing I can touch, right? We know it's been verified. Romans kept very good records. Suetonius, Tacitus, Pliny, they all wrote about it. We know that it was a historical fact. And then you have the human understanding, which is where the Messiah's mission comes in. Jews had a very different view on what the Messiah's mission was, and that's scripture interpretation. And then you have the divinity issue, which is always the last leg. And if you look at it as a three-legged stool, you cannot be a Christian if one of those legs is broken. So you have to have an understanding of the historicity of the Bible and who the main character was. You have to have a firm foundation understanding what his mission was and what his teachings were. And then you have to have that understanding of divinity. And if you have those three legs, you have something to stand on, especially on an apologetics viewpoint. And you have to dive into all three of these to even have these kind of conversations so that you can give a reasoned defense for what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. So when you say you can't be a Christian, meaning you can't really fully offer a sound defense without
Correct.
really understanding those three. Because I would say there's plenty of Christians or any, walk of faith who don't actually know even the history of their
Oh,
religion.
100%.
And I'll be honest, like, it really does take a lot of thorough study, and like I would say, you and I we probably learn something every week that we're like, holy crap, I didn't put those things together. Like every time I'll come to my wife and she's like, all right, she doesn't understand even what I'm, but like I didn't put those two things. I knew those two separate pieces of information, but I didn't really connect them.
Oh, and it's amazing how much we can read and try and understand. And
yeah,
and I want to be very, very clear. I'm not saying that people aren't Christians. Actually, I'd say 98% of people don't fully understand why they believe what they believe. I think most of it is traditional, and that's fine. But that's also a scary place to be as a Christian.
Mm-hmm. Well, and also, again, if you're dependent on an authority giving that, then that authority better know what they're doing. But further, the authority also has to be willing to even share that information. Like,
right.
That's the other thing. Like, think about the average nominal Christian who goes to church once a week. You're not going to get that information. What time would you have to talk to the pastor and get even if your pastor was really knowledgeable?
Yeah.
Let's just say your pastor studied theology and history, and how would they impart that information to you in anything other than short, little pieces which can be misunderstood? So,
yeah, you're not gonna become an accountant if you go to school an hour a week.
Exactly.
You'll never get done with school. It's crazy.
And you also have to be committed to having that time to like really just sit down and look at the information.
Right.
Like even to know what questions to even ask requires looking at.
I've got one guy in my men's group that is a stellar question asker, and he pushes me just about every time we talk. And I'm like, we're done talking for about a week. Okay.
Yeah, but that's good, right? Like it's like, that's what opens up. Cause then you're like, wait, you know what?
Yeah. And you have to be willing to have your mind changed on subjects.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got an atheist employee, and we have like 30 minutes a day. We have a full theological discussion, and he has completely changed my viewpoint on free will. Like it's amazing the way he did it, because I'm still not opposite of what I was, but
Right.
the way that I think about it now, I'm no longer thinking of, well, my free will is I can make this choice, this choice, this choice, this choice, and blah 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 blah. I no longer think about it on the micro level. It's fully on the macro level. I've literally got two choices, no matter what the choice is underneath of it. I've got my way or I've got God's way. End of story.
Does
So
he come from it like from the Sam Harris kind of like?
he's very Chris Dawkins, or Richard Dawkins.
Richard, yeah.
Yeah. He
I
listens
just
to a
know
lot of
Sam Harris
Dillahunty.
did a lot of stuff on free will and
Yeah.
stuff, like, but from a secular, like, pretty
Amen.
much that you don't have free will, but it's because your brain chemistry and your disposition to certain things. And yeah, that's an interesting topic, like it's one of those things though, it's like you have to live as though you do either way, because
Yeah, and there's Christians that'll go down swinging on each other over that topic. Let's be honest. Calvinists and
yeah. Yeah,
I
they're
don't think they're
fun.
heretical or anything. I just think they have a different understanding, and that's fine.
The funny thing with Calvinists too, you'll talk to them and it's like it's not a matter whether they're correct or not. It's like they almost sometimes they'll get frustrated, like it's so apparent what they're saying, and it's like
Yeah.
what? Like it's certain if you're right, it's certainly not just an obvious thing, like
Well, to be fair, as a Christian, I have almost the same reaction to the Trinity, because I've taken a long time to fully try to understand it and
yeah.
try to explain it without any sort of heresy, which still very, very hard. But we have that same reaction because it's embedded in our doctrine. And if it's in our doctrine, it's in our belief system. And I can change an opinion. I'm having a whole different thing trying to change a belief.
Yeah, yeah. It's yep.
So let me pull these up. I loved your questions, and I had to start looking back hermeneutically
And I
through the
just kind of
Bible.
rattled those off the top of my head when I was typing though, because those are like, usually those are broad starting points that, I mean,
Oh,
you could literally
100%.
talk about any one of those topics for a year, probably without using.
Well, a couple of them I had like 4 pages of notes. I'm like, yeah,
Oh,
that's a
really?
hefty
Cool.
topic.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. My wife, like, I'll be on or talk for like 3 or 4 hours with somebody, and she'll be like, "You must have covered every single." I was like, "No, we actually didn't even get to the topic that we were."
Well, I mean,
Like these things can be never ending. It's just
just for full understanding, I mean, they had the whole Council of Nicaea, the Council of Troy, the Council of Trent. The Council of Nicaea covered like two things. That was it.
right. And how long were they?
Well, months.
Months, right?
All they did was make the Nicene Creed and then say Arianism is evil.
Yeah.
Knock that off.
Now it was, a bunch of people, but
Oh yeah.
so I mean that took a while, probably just the procedure and like,
Yeah, it's there's a lot to it. They said there were about 30 people, but if you count their entire entourage, there were hundreds. Because let's be honest, bishops didn't go anywhere without at least 3 priests back then.
I'm sure. I know, yeah.
I mean, they just got done being killed, so.
Yeah, I'm sure some of them were a little like, yeah, is this Constantine safe? Actually, like,
He's an interesting one to study in history because.
yeah, I have a lot in that area because I think so much turned on Constantine.
Oh yeah.
That especially like just looking at the writings of Eusebius and like,
Excuse me.
and then I think Theodosius obviously after was more so that was when it just went hardcore.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I mean Eusebius was a contemporary too to
yeah,
Constantine.
yeah,
So I mean it was
yeah,
super super cool.
he was his writer.
Pre-Nicaea.
Yeah,
I think it was 30 years before Council of Nicaea.
yeah,
So it's super interesting to see all his stuff come together.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
and he was an Arian too, right?
yes,
So
which
like,
is even stranger.
right,
But he was one of the first to uh, call out the Arab nations, the Arab Christians versus the Arab Muslims. Well, future Muslims. He was one of the
yeah.
first to do it.
That period from like the 300 to Augustine is like fascinating, right? In that stretch.
Yeah, yeah. The pagans were worshiping Hubal back then, but it's crazy everything that happened over there in the course of like a
There was
thousand
so
years.
much massive change,
Oh, ridiculous amounts.
and
Oh,
I think Christianity was very, very different
yes.
after that. Like,
Well, I think the one statement that came out of the entire very very like posthumous Jesus was the recognition that Christians were getting, not because of the way they worshiped or the way that they ran anything, because they didn't. They were constantly hiding, but the way that they loved each other. It's been written about. Pliny was probably one of the biggest to write about it, that they loved each other. And that's just an amazing thing to hear.
yeah, that letter that Pliny has to what he's talking about, what should we do with the Christians that we're finding?
These guys are
That's a very
losing the
interesting
plot.
letter. Yeah, it's like, should we hunt them down? Should we? They're like, nope. But but that's an interesting response because it wasn't. It was actually no. Don't seek them out if they commit a crime. If they are brought to you for committing a crime, then you
Take them
know
out.
you try them, and but you're not to seek them out. So
Yeah, and it's amazing that after 2,000 years and everything that Christianity went through, good, bad, and ugly, because there was a lot of ugly, it's still around. It stood the test of time.
I
And
think too, like it's I think you have to be careful. Like if you read that letter with Pliny and then apply, like, well, that was the Roman attitude for, like you have to look at each emperor
oh
and
yeah,
like they're so different. There's so much variation in how they tolerated different,
yeah.
different areas and just like, like obviously people like Diocletian and like they had a much different attitude than
Well, yeah.
maybe even than like a Marcus Aurelius, or something like it was.
I mean, we survived Nero, so if you can survive Nero, you can get through pretty much anything.
I think the thing with Nero, I think there was still lots of confusion, like who even a Christian was at that point.
Oh
Like the
yeah,
Jews and Christians were almost intermingled. Like if there were, and then also what type of Christian. Like was it a Pauline type Christian? Was it a you know pretty much Torah observing? I mean, they would have been
yeah,
characterized as Jews, like from a Roman point of view, they would have been given all the protections that.
yeah. They're my next area of study. Current Messianic Jews. I want to know. I want to understand them more.
Yeah, well, Yeah, it is interesting because that's getting back to like, are their roots coming from Jesus? Are their roots really more from, like they're certainly not in lockstep with Roman Catholicism,
Right. Which, I mean, neither am I,
but
but
everything is a development.
oh yeah, and
So
I
it's
I think each person has to go through a development of faith and understanding, and usually by if they start young, maybe about by 50, they'll have half of it kind of maybe figured out. There's just a lot to it and a lot to study, and I think we're all wrong to an extent, and it's okay to admit we're wrong as long as we look at things with open eyes and open hearts. I think the answers will come as long as we continue to seek them.
Yeah, I mean, like as far as like, the ethical commands and like where are you on like the Sermon on the Mount, for example.
Mm-hmm.
My feeling is that, oh, it's more than just a feeling. I think most Christians do not follow the ethical commands on the Sermon on the Mount. And I think
We can
that's
actually
where a big
start on that.
divide has. I think that's actually where I would divide, where I would consider actually biblical New Testament Christians from those who are just what I would say like nominal. In fact, the thing about Eusebius, he does actually talk about that. He actually makes this point to say that the disciples actually taught like two different sets of standards,
I mean,
which
yeah, kind of. They
that's what
did.
he claims. I don't see that anywhere in the New Testament. I think that's more of a practicality. And I think that's a development in the time of Constantine, where the empire is now mostly, or it's becoming more and more Christian, right?
Yeah.
Now it's recognized eventually as like pretty much the official religion under Theodosius. And then there's a necessity if everyone's coming into the church or is expected to be part of the church, right? You can't really expect everyone to really truly follow the ethical commands and be devout believers. So you have to almost make classes of them. And I
Well,
think,
I think that's why I think that's why reading the words of Jesus yourself has such a huge impact, because if you can't understand anything else, I mean, the parables that Jesus gave were for those with the heart of understanding. Those that are able to understand or have the desire to understand will understand him. But the big things he always said clearly, like the great commandment. There, it's very clear right there that you are to love the Lord your God with all of your mind, heart, soul, and strength.
yeah,
And likewise,
your neighbor as yourself.
and that it does, it covers all of the law of the prophets, and it covers everything under God's law. Those
The
two
problem
things.
is Christians have struggled for 2,000 years figuring out actually how to apply that and what that means because,
Correct.
you know,
I think a lot of that is an identity issue. Um, we hang our identity on what we do, what we know, what we offer. But as a Christian, we're not called to do that. We are called to center our identity in Christ. Everything else is subsequential. Like Christ gives every aspect of who I am and who you are. He's already got a plan for you, and life will usually go a little bit easier if you just follow his plan. But we want to center ourselves in I'm not good enough because I don't make enough money. So we start to covet. Well, my neighbor just got a brand new car, so I've got to work a little bit harder, work that overtime. I got to get a brand new car. We always want abundance, when the only thing we really need to be focused on is abundance in our souls. So ethically, we have fallen so far away from those teachings because we don't understand what true love is, because we don't have the identity that was given to us in the first place. If we don't know who we are, we can't love ourselves. And if we can't love ourselves, we can't love outwardly, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Well, and I would say the problem is what you just said. I would say there's a lot of self-identified Christians that actually don't find anything wrong with what you just said, like coveting their neighbor's car, and
Yeah.
they actually just live that lifestyle. And it's thinking that somehow that is actually can still, if you squeeze it hard enough into that hole, it can still count as being a Christian. And like, I don't see it. Like when you read the ethics of Jesus, like it is hardcore. Like it is not intended to be successful in this world and its success in the next world, right? And so like if you don't read it under that lens that
Yeah.
you are to give up all, and then
So
I think you're already lost.
I read a book called Radical by David Platt. And his whole premise for that book was to, because we've gone so far on the opposite end of Jesus's teachings, that he wanted to push the diehard radical message of Jesus to the ridiculous. Now, Jesus didn't say you can't be rich and get into heaven. What he said, without saying it really, is that you need to sell all your possessions because that's what you find your worth in. All of your things is what you love the most. Store your treasures in heaven.
Right. Every saying is against what it would be to be rich.
Yeah.
So when someone wealthy says, "Well, I can be wealthy," and still, to me, the burden would be entirely on them to show some evidence that that's true. Now, I hear what you're saying, like in technically just having a lot of money doesn't necessarily dictate where your heart is, but you would have to show. I think the burden of proof would be on someone who continues to gain money.
100%. And you'll know them by
Where
their
is
fruit.
if it's not on that, then how are you doing that?
Yeah, and you'll know
You
them by
might
their
want to
fruit.
write a book and tell people how to make lots of money when not caring about how to make, right?
Yeah.
Because you either care about it and it's still something now, but that's what I mean. Christians have explained away that in all sorts of ways, like, well, I'm making money because I use it to expand the kingdom of God, or I use it to help the need. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's always some justification for it, but the root doesn't matter. Jesus, I think, would say, doesn't matter. Your heart is not, like you said, your treasures are on earth, not in heaven, you know? Like
I would go. So this is a paradox in itself from just the teachings of Jesus. I would say, looking at Job, looking at, and there were many biblical figures that were rich, but did actually use their riches for the kingdom of God. The difference is, and this is where I get leery. We would look at somebody with a lot of money right now, and we wouldn't know their heart or what they're doing behind the scenes if they're truly using it for God's kingdom, because they wouldn't be doing it in public. They wouldn't be asking for recognition for it.
Well, that's one thing.
So if they're quiet and not boastful, it's still a toss-up, because they're either quiet and greedy or quiet and giving.
The other thing is, I think a Christian would need to be careful using the Old Testament too much as a reference, because if you look at it, their their living situation, their outlook is an entirely different thing. So like,
100%.
like the Jews were told that if they followed the law, they would prosper in a, like material sense, right? They would have more offspring, they would be given land, they would be given crops, they would be, so there was a material gain for the ancient Israelite, right?
Right.
Like if you look at the Deuteronomy blessings and curses, it's like material, right? It's
Yeah.
if you do this, you will earn and get this. If you don't, you will not get these things, and furthermore, they'll be taken from you. And so this is a reversal of what Jesus is really saying, right? Like the
Yeah.
material gains are not going to come from following Christ. It's going to be a spiritual gain that's going to happen in the next life. It's like a promise, right? You're promised immortality, essentially, right?
Right.
But that's going to be in this next life. This life is going to be hard. It's going to be where you actually are going to be the last. You are going to be the servant, right? You are going to be the one that suffers. You are going to be. It's the whole reversal, and it comes from that suffering servant.
Right. Isaiah 53.
Right? So it's a total reversal, and it's the first will be the last, right? Blessed are the poor. It's so for me, the whole Sermon on the Mount ethics are the opposite of what a Jew, and this is why it's a stumbling block for the Jews, because what do you mean? God said we'll prosper, right? In a material way. And I think Christians try to mix that. I think they try to get a little bit of that. Or their argument is that, well, God surely wouldn't want me to have some of that. Look at the Old Testament. And they go to, but that's not what Jesus said. When he came, he said, you have heard it say, right? An eye for an eye. And he turns that whole ethic on its head, right?
Exactly. And that's why they lost their mind.
Right? And that's the strict, non-violent, so no, you can't have that, right? Like the Jews could, right?
So anytime I get somebody that is new to faith, new to study, my first thing I want them to do is I want them to read the Gospels backwards, ending in Matthew, because that was the gospel written for the Jews to understand more, and then go to Old Testament. But you're 100% correct on that. It is not for anything but morality at this point. So we started learning who the main character is, and now we need to learn about the main character. So I like to think of breaking it up in 3 chapters. So the gospel is chapter 1. Genesis through Malachi is chapter 2. So now I can understand some of the backstory and who this main character really is throughout time. And then we get into the Pauline epistles and Revelation and John's 5 books, 4 books after John. And then you get a deep dive into what's the expectation, right? I think that's important to read it that way. Because you're 100% right. The New Testament or the Old Testament does not have any bearing on our salvation now. That was nailed to the cross.
Measuring stick, right? It's to say, well, from a Christian perspective, this is what God is holding you to.
Yeah. Like, this is where we were. This is where we need to go.
The good news is you have Christ. The bad news is his ethic is actually more stringent.
Yep.
Right.
And he really did. He set the record straight. And that Jesus constantly goes back to Genesis 2. He is consistently hinting back to Genesis 2 before the fall. Like, this was my plan for you the whole time. You guys were never meant to have anger in your heart towards your brother. That's murder.
Right.
Like, you should never covet. You should never lie. all of these things, if you don't love your neighbor, then you are sinning against my creation in the first place.
Yep.
Because you were meant to live in harmony.
And if you notice when Paul lists what are the things that will keep you out of the kingdom, it's all like emotional, right? Or
Yeah.
it's not like an action. It's not like slapping your brother. It's not put in that way. It's deceit, right? Or hatred, or like, so these are all human emotions, right? And the same thing is when in Mark, when he says, what comes out of your mouth, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It's very similar to Paul's list, and
Eh,
it's pretty much inward. So if you're dead inward, your outward actions are going to be meaningless as well. Like, you'll get no credit for walking the old lady across the street if you're like, you bitch, this is a
Yeah.
waste of my time, right?
Yeah. It's not what goes in a man that defiles him, but what comes
Right.
out. Because we all have the propensity to sin. We all lean that way. And let's be honest, if Adam and Eve were any one of us and our wife, we would do the same thing. Because that's just how we are.
Yeah.
Understanding that's how we are is a hard pill to swallow. Because I like to think I'm pretty good, but I know I'm not. I know that nothing I do that is good comes from me. And that's how I have to live my life to this point, because for 40 years before, I fell on my face every time I hit that mountaintop because I never knew how to get down.
But you know what I would find? I'm not a Christian, but if I actually theologically, that helps you too, because if you just think of good is the equivalent of God,
Exactly.
and right there, you would realize as a human, if you are a Christian, you'll never be the equivalent of God. So therefore, it would be impossible to ever claim to be good, right?
Right.
Like, it's what Jesus says, when they say, hey, what does it mean? Or what do we need to do to be good, right? And he says, no one is good but God, right? So, like, theologically, good is equal to God, right?
Yeah.
So you can't do anything good that isn't of the standard of God.
And that's why Paul says to take captive every thought, because that's the only way that we curb our propensity to evil.
Right. It just brings then the question of, if good, then that's Euthyro's dilemma. If good can't be defined independently of God, then what does that really mean? Then you have to examine the character of God, right? But if good can be defined independently, then what makes God good? That's an interesting thing to
Yeah.
sort out. But I take it from, like, I'm willing to just say, okay, theologically, from the Christian point of view, God is good.
Yeah.
Right there. So we'll use good in that definition, because otherwise, good then is just a flimsy, can be applied to anything, and there's no objective way to apply it, right?
Well, that's the big thing, is definitions, right? Words have meaning. I mean, the entire universe was created with a word. So words have power and words have meaning. And if we don't take definitions and meaning in our words seriously, then we'll never be able to communicate with each other, which leads to violence.
Yep. Yeah, and it's important. That's why I think, like, people kind of defining what you're talking about, because you're right. People throw around good and bad and evil, and they're talking right past each other. Like,
Yeah.
how would I know even what you mean by evil unless I know even what you define as evil? And, like, if you're not a Christian and I'm talking to you, then you probably have a different meaning of evil anyway. It's probably just whatever offends you and what makes you upset, or, there's
If
some.
That's a big thing for me and
It's-
my atheist employee. We talk about this at least once a week on objective morality. If there is no objective truth, then there is no good or evil. Period.
yeah, not in a
In an
well, not
ultimate
in an
sense.
objective sense. But
Right.
again, language has so like I'm sure he argues, yeah, but I'm using it in like a colloquial, like I'm using it, you understand what I mean when I
Yeah.
say evil, right? Like again, it's something that negatively I find to be
But on the other hand, and I hit him with it
Yeah.
every time, is there are at least 3 things that everybody on this planet can be like, that is objectively evil, and it disgusts me. Hurting children is absolutely wrong. I've never met anybody in the world that is like, yeah, man, it's totally cool to kill and beat children in the street. It's fine. Nobody has that.
But there are plenty of people that justify killing children within a greater cause,
Well, the Bible's full of
right?
justifying evil.
Yeah, and God justifies killing children at times, right? Like it's
True.
so within a larger context, if it's like a greater good, again, they're gonna use, or there's some higher purpose to it, then killing children can be something that is allowed. Like look at the war, Israel and Gaza, right?
Yeah.
Many children were killed, and the Israeli government will say, well, yes, that's an unfortunate effect of the war. That's never our intention. They are not our targets. However, we cannot allow those combatants or whatever. There's some justification why it still has to be done the way it's happening. So
Yeah,
like,
to an extent.
there's
Yeah.
always a justification. So I agree with you. I think most people, like, if they just said, okay, that's why you have that like killing children just for fun thing.
Mhm.
Like, well, yes, I agree. Most people don't just kill children just for fun. That's like, but there are people.
There
that
are
do.
people.
So that's what I'm saying. There's
Not the majority, though.
Not even. But then again, like, are they morally justifying it? Probably not. Probably people that kill children just for fun. It's like, well, that's what I do, and take it or leave it. Like
Yeah,
they
that's fair.
probably don't try to justify it or maybe they do. Maybe they have some that children are actually vessels of, if they have some warped worldview.
Oh, there are
children
many
are
people like that, though.
carrying, something that's going to be the downfall of humankind. And if we don't, but then that gets into like, are they actually sane? Are they, operating on? So now you're into like not even just ethics, it's how are they perceiving?
It's mental stability
Right,
and
are they even
reality.
perceiving things in a way that's like
Yeah, because we had an uptick for it was a good 10 years where almost every other month you saw some mother killing her kids between 3 and 12 years old.
Yeah, and if you think that there's a mandate or something, right? Then,
yeah, and that would be a big warning that, because I mean there's no monopoly on real estate in the crazy department. There's a lot of crazy Christians too.
Right. Well, how many atheists have thrown at Christians? Well, if you were Abraham, would you have killed you? Would you have sacrificed Isaac?
That's not a fair question, though, because Abraham talked to God face to face, so he knew for a fact he was real.
And a lot of Christians will answer yes. If they knew it was God that commanded them to do it, they would, right?
Yeah, if you knew.
If you knew. Now that goes, I would say, completely opposite of the ethics of Jesus.
I agree. And that's where
God
we sit
would
today.
overrule that, right? If Jesus and God are
well,
that it's like divine command. If you are one who follows divine command theory, then a command that isn't normally considered to be ethical, right? Absent the
True.
command could now be.
I wouldn't say that it would be antithetical. And we saw that story as a precursor. So that was foreshadowing by the best author of all time. I mean, that the whole story of Abraham and Isaac was foreshadowing to Jesus.
The ram as the substitute and the thicket and all that.
Well, the ram kind of throws me off a little bit because they think that was embellishment after the fact, and that's fine because, and I will tell you, after reading my Bible a lot, I'm sure, because this is part of one of your questions, I'm sure there are embellishments, and I'm sure I know for a fact there are many variants. The variants found, I would say, do not have any bearing on core doctrine.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, like there's a variant where Jesus heals the leper and he's like angry in one
Yeah,
reading, and but to me that's I don't make arguments on that kind of stuff. Like
yeah.
I'm not mine. I don't even contradictions because I have a different way that I think the gospels were. I don't think the contradictions. I think that if you sat both of the two gospel writers down and said there's contradictions, they'd say, I hope so, because I
There
wrote
should
my
be.
own.
Yeah, they have to be from different perspectives. I mean, you have to. If you and I witnessed the exact same event at the exact same time, and then 20 minutes later we're separated and they interview us, we are going to have a base core story, but wildly different details.
But see, I think the contradictions are purposeful, theological. I think like let me give you an example. So
Sure.
in Mark, when Jesus says, "Who do you say that I am?" Right?
Mm-hmm.
Peter identifies him as the Messiah, right?
The Messiah, the Son of Man.
But in Mark he doesn't say the Son of Man.
That's
That's
true.
what's interesting. In Matthew he does. He adds that part onto it, right? But
True.
not in Mark.
Well,
So I think those are purposeful. I think in Mark's whole idea is that nobody knows who Jesus is, right? Particularly Peter. Peter is absolutely ignorant to the fact that Jesus is this suffering Messiah. He's the suffering Son of Man. He thinks he's this militaristic Messiah, right? He's going to
yep.
lead them to overthrow Rome, and that's what all the disciples are thinking, right? Because they're reading,
Especially Judas.
right? Judas, it's like this is the whole idea, and this is what none of them understand, despite the fact that he says 3 times flat out that I have to suffer, die, and be raised on the third day, right? They still don't get it. And then they're also the inner circle, and they're told like the actual interpretation of everything, and they still don't understand it. So for me, the whole reading of Mark is like really damning on the disciples. It's
Oh,
like
yeah.
they're actually more culpable and responsible for their ignorance than even the average person, right? Because they're given the direct secrets and they still don't understand, right? Like
Well,
Peter lacks faith, he's drowning. But the interesting thing, so like the reason I brought up the Mark and Matthew is that if you notice in Matthew, I think this is another slight against Peter, even in Matthew, even the part that Roman Catholics used to say, he's been given the keys to the, because
they did hate each other for a
earlier
short time.
on, they have the same scene where Peter tries to walk on the water, right? He sings, and then they have to pull him in the boat. But they make the point that the other disciples do identify Jesus as the Son of Man.
Yeah.
And then notice later, Peter calls Jesus the Son of Man. He says, well, it was the Father who revealed it to you. Congratulations.
Yeah.
But the other ones had already known that. So Peter was actually the last one to actually realize, because he was out on the boat sinking for lack of
Faith.
faith, right?
Yeah.
So Mark makes it clear he didn't know he was the Son of Man.
And I
He
would
only knew
say,
he was this Messiah, right? Which was not the right answer. It was like really, or it was like partly right, right? It's like, I am the Messiah, but not in the way that you imagine.
right.
And then he goes on to deny him because he doesn't know what his purpose actually is, right?
And I
So
would
that's an
say,
example of me where those two authors, that's not somebody there recording the event, and Mark guy just forgets to put that part in.
yeah.
It's absolutely vital in understanding the story. Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, there's another meaning behind that too, but details like this also attribute to the veracity of it. Because if I was writing from my perspective, I'm probably not putting any embarrassing details of myself in. And there's plenty of times where Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John all do. Well, Mark was a contemporary of Peter, but
Yeah.
well, yeah. You spend enough time with somebody, you might put some embarrassing things in. But
That's why I don't buy at all the church history about that Peter was the one behind Mark, and that Mark was like his secretary who wrote it down. I
I
I
don't
think
think it was
I
dictation
think
at all.
I think Mark is like anti Peter. In fact, here's my and again, I can't prove this, but I think
Yeah,
Mark is written from like a follower of Paul who had a falling out with Peter. And I think it's written from the perspective of that Paul is actually the one who understands, and right, he was the
that's a
one
pretty
who
well.
think about. Paul makes the point, and he talks about being the least. He talks about the fact that he was the last one to see the resurrected Jesus, and he makes these points that he was not worthy and all this. But on the other hand, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I am gonna pull up Mark 1:1.
Uh, yeah, he makes it on the other hand clear that he didn't gain anything from those apostles and didn't get in. They didn't add anything. He got his whole gospel from his direct encounter with Jesus and from revelation that he continues to receive. So, to me, the whole point of Mark is that these apostles have nothing on Paul's gospel, and they added nothing to it. They knew nothing about Jesus when he was
Yeah,
on the earth. They were in the same position that Paul was, essentially, in other words, accept Jesus after he's risen, or
so that's actually pretty
they have no
interesting.
advantage over Paul, right? And Paul says that in his own letter in
Yeah.
Galatians, that like they have no advantage over me.
Well, Peter himself defers to Paul.
Yeah, like like
So
like these guys knew the earthly Jesus, but they really could add nothing, because what's important is the risen Jesus, who then discloses who he really is, and so like
yeah.
the whole revelation, like they didn't get any of that until they saw him again, right after he rose. They didn't know that he was foretold in the scriptures and all this stuff.
Hmm.
So that's my theory, is that Mark's writing from like a Pauline point of view. And if you read through Mark, it's like all Pauline type
I'm actually
idea.
going to reread Mark through that lens
Think
because
about the part where Mark declares all foods clean, right? He does that
right.
little aside. That's like a Pauline,
Yeah.
like the real, like the Jesus. He didn't really want to put that to me in the mouth of Jesus directly, but it's like Yes,
Well,
but
he starts
actually
Mark
all food
1:1
is
super
that's
hot.
Paul, right? And like, the Sabbath, Paul talks about
Right.
certain days are holy for some, for others. Like, you don't have to observe the Sabbath in a strict, right? It's you're no longer under these obligations. And what does the Jesus and Mark do? He kind of is like, it's he's not
Yeah.
it's not an anti-Torah, but it's like it's showing you the hints that are leading to Paul, right? Or it's actually following what Paul's saying. Does
Which
that
makes
make sense?
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I actually have constructed, I could share with you like 50 connections with Paul, and it's actually Mark, Matthew, and Luke, where I think information from Paul is kind of used in the Gospels, like in a like for example, when Paul, here's one that fascinated me when I kind of, let me see. The verse about where it says that like John the Baptist came eating and drinking, and
In Mark?
yeah, I think it's in Matthew. And then it says the Son of Man came eating and drinking, and they called him a glutton or whatever.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So I always found that verse like, that's kind of like weird. So I think that goes back to Paul's talking about, that like food, the dietary laws essentially.
Yeah.
But if you look at, oh, here it is. So if you go to Romans 14:17, look at that verse and look how similar that is to Matthew 11:19. It's in Luke too, I think, Luke 7:34.
Oh yeah.
Isn't that weird? So I think that was kind of pulled from Paul's idea and then read like, now the interesting thing is the Greek words are not the same, but they're in the form of, I'd have to look at, I did an analysis of it, but like they're in the form of a verb in Paul
Yeah.
and then in a noun in the gospel. So, but they're the same, but they mean eating and drinking, like, isn't
Yeah,
that
but not
interesting?
gluttony. Well, where's my interlinear on that? I'm gonna bookmark that one, and I'm going to research that later because that's why I love having these discussions because I get to see things that I never really thought of before.
Yeah, so there's that, like, and then he talks about, um, I'll share with you because I've got like the different verses connected kind of that with um, just pick out a few others that I think are pretty interesting.
Where was that? Oh yeah, well yeah, we definitely covered the ethical commands.
So like when Paul talks about, let me see if I can find on my list. I've got so many on here, it's hard to. Like Paul uses the language of like the Jesus, coming like a thief.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's in First Thessalonians 5:2. And then you see that in Matthew 24:43.
Yeah, his eschatology is not shrouded as much in different language than we would obviously use today, but his eschatology is much more abrupt, I'll say. And speaking of that,
I'm
I'm
trying to find this one that.
super happy that you are this well versed in the Bible, because I had a whole page of notes typed up for your question on the when did the New Testament writers expect Jesus to return, and why has it taken over 2,000 years? Although I shouldn't. So I'm a post mill dispensationalist for the
Yeah.
record. So they're biblically and historically, I mean, I'm very evidence based. Biblically and historically, everything he said in Matthew 24 was done in 70 AD.
Okay, so you're like a partial preterist kind of.
Well, if you read it verbatim what he says, and you can historically look back, and every bit of it happened before the second temple fell. Revelation is where we have to look forward to. And that is super, super confusing language. And that's why no two Christians agree on eschatology. And if they do, they're just regurgitating what somebody else said, and that's fine.
So yeah, I'll talk about eschatology. I'm trying to find this one other though that. Before I just go spewing about it, I want to try to get the verses. So you can go right to it.
Oh, you're fine.
Why is you can never find something when you're trying
Because you're trying to find it.
to? It's like all just.
I'm going to grab my soda real quick. Give me 1 second.
It has to do with when he talks about like yeast, you know.
I was fast.
Oh, here it is. So if you go to like 1 Corinthians 5.8.
Oh, that's not what I meant to do.
Does that remind you of anything in Mark and Matthew and
Where? Logos went a
remember in
little
Mark
crazy.
where he talks about the yeast of the Pharisees and
Oh, yeah. Why did you take me? My Logos is acting crazy.
so I mean essentially Paul's saying the same thing. He's just not mentioning Pharisees and
You said 1 Corinthians
5.8.
Okay. Yes, there we are. Let us therefore celebrate the festival, not with the old leaven, the leaven of malice and evil,
Yep.
but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth.
So when he talks about the leaven of malice, right? And then Jesus talks about that the Pharisees essentially, right, are
Shamitz.
this leaven of malice, right? Like it comes after they are feeding the feeding of the
Yep.
multitudes, right? And they're like totally confused, the disciples, and he's warning them not to eat the leaven of the Pharisees. So
That
my
is interesting.
hypothesis is that could have been pulled in from Paul as well, right?
Yeah, because that's Paul was much more educated, so he may have given guidance and understanding on some of the things. So that would actually make sense. I mean, possibly Luke. Luke was also very educated, but I don't think he would have the full understanding on the Jewish side of things that he put in his gospel. And I should really stop saying his gospel. It's Jesus's gospel according to him.
But I mean, Paul, like the Son of God, that comes from Paul. At the whole faith idea in Mark, like that's obviously, in line with Paul's idea that you're saved by faith,
True.
right? Who are the ones who come to Jesus and, are given like a positive reference. It's the ones who have faith, right? And it's
Right.
the ones who aren't expected to. It's often like Gentiles and
Oh, so there's a big disconnect there. I mean, I fully agree with Paul on that. That we are saved by faith through grace, so that no man may boast. But I also agree with James on the other hand that faith without works is dead. Those commingle, but they're talking about two very different things.
yeah, I don't look at those as like being against each other. I think
Mm-mm.
they're the same.
I just put out a teaching on my Spotify on fruit of the spirit, and
I know that people like Luther and stuff had an issue with um
well, strangely,
James, the epistle of James.
Luther's biggest problem was strangely the same problem I have today. It's the legalism and the Pharisee movement for traditionalism in the current church. Faith is personal and shared, but doctrinally it should not have law after law after law. The law's been fulfilled. We have 3 total commandments: love God, love your neighbor, and go out into the world and make disciples. We keep those 3 things, we're okay.
So, and speaking of faith, here's another one: the faith to move mountains. If you notice in First Corinthians, it's First Corinthians 13:2. Paul talks about faith in relation to mountains, and then you find that also in Matthew, Mark.
See, I'm going to have to go back through
Matthew
the gospel.
17:20, Mark 11:23.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's nothing. I'll put it to you like this. Once I started doing this, there was not any theme I couldn't find in the God, or any theme that I found that was important in Paul, I found in the Gospels.
To be fair, even if they weren't co-inspired, they should link.
Yeah, that's what like people have shared this with. Well, of course, Paul got his, you know, like gospel from Jesus, right?
Right. Well,
But you see, kind of what I'm saying is it's not used often in the same context. Like the Gospels are putting it into like a narrative where Paul's like explaining it in a more general sense. Do you know what I mean?
right. I don't disagree with that.
Like it's being applied in the Gospels. And here's the thing: it's not about like disproving Christianity. Like, again, if the Gospels were written not as, they weren't, maybe, here's I guess what I'm putting forward: if the Gospels weren't written as historical narratives but theological, that wouldn't in any way discount Christianity, right?
I think they're a good mix of both, though.
Like, people would certainly have an issue with it accepting it at first because they're so used to, if
Yeah.
that was true. I'm saying if it's true that that was the case, you would just have to look at the Gospels in a different way, right?
Oh, 100%.
Like, it would just be like putting Paul's theology in a narrative form.
True.
But then it would just go back to, is Paul reliable? And if Paul's reliable, then it wouldn't be a problem with the gospel. It's just a narrative of Paul.
This is probably going
Right.
to upset some people, but if
Oh yeah, they would absolutely, because again, when you get fixated on believing that it's this or that, right?
I would almost put this forward, that if it all hinged on Paul, it's still 100% true in my mind. Because nobody
Right.
goes
So
from one of the most educated, richest people and throws it away to take a life of prison and punishment. Nobody does that for no reason.
right. So then you and I would just have to really look at Paul and do a deep dive on that. It would, the question would be, is Paul reliable? And right.
Right.
But it wouldn't prove, and that's what I'm trying to like show to people, if all these connections do come directly from Paul's letters or they're largely influenced, that it doesn't show that Christianity is false. That wouldn't be
Right.
my point. It's showing just how does one source get from another, right?
And I mean, they all did talk. And Peter and Paul, or yeah, Peter and Paul, Saul, they obviously had interactions. Paul had interactions with the other disciples, period. They had arguments, they had theological arguments. So I'm sure there is some, at least 25% came from conversations with Paul.
So like one that Paul makes clear, he says that, you know, the Lord's Supper in First Corinthians 11:23, he makes it clear that he got that from the Lord, right? From
Right.
Jesus. He says, I received this directly from that on that day, right? He broke the bread and gave his, you know, that all. But most Christians, I would say, well, that's a historical narrative in the Gospels that came from the people that were there, right? Or at least secondary sources. I could argue that came directly from Paul as well, right?
Yeah.
Like Mark's getting that from Paul, right?
And either way, I would say getting it straight from Jesus is probably a better source than the emotional wrecks that were the disciples in that room. Because I mean, they
Right.
just
That's like part of it, and that's funny because I often say that, like, look, the gospels themselves show that the disciples are not very good references of information. Now, after they encountered the risen Jesus, you know, perhaps then they got more in alignment with what was going on, but that doesn't bring back your memory still, right?
well, it possibly alters it a little bit, right? Like your viewpoint for what you thought you understood, and now your mind's blown. So there's a good chance that some stories are just gone because you can't remember them. Like it was so minuscule at the time because I just watched the risen Christ. Like Thomas, for example. If I were Thomas, I wouldn't be able to tell a single story if the dead and risen Christ showed up and was like, "Hey, just put your hands in my handprints." Like, come on, I'm right here. It would freak me out. I wouldn't be able to get anything out. So there's got to be some. I mean, obviously, all Scripture is inspired by the Holy Spirit. We don't take the Muslim approach that it is word for word the word of God. We know better than that. We know that man wrote it. Man is fallible, but the message will not be changed and hasn't been changed in thousands of years from the Old Testament to 2,000 years now for where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, you know, so it's those connections, and then like the overall theme I just find in Mark, like, you know, the whole idea that Jesus's family, the biological family, is not the most important, right?
Right.
Or not important at all. It's who are my followers, right? That
Yeah.
to me is a theme of Paul, right? Again, he makes the point that the original disciples have no greater authority over anything because they were biologic or not biologically, but because they were connected, in an
Yeah.
earthly ministry, they are on the same ground, right? They're still responsible for understanding.
And they were blatantly and openly sinners too, because
Yeah,
they obviously didn't follow all the laws that Jesus laid out because they didn't understand half of what he was saying.
right.
He had to treat them like children, which is a really good narrative because we're all his children. And the fact that they truly didn't understand, they probably did have to get some help from somebody more educated. And
Yeah.
the vast majority of people back then were illiterate, especially fishermen like Peter and Andrew.
And it's interesting how Mark treats Mary too. If you notice, Mary is referred to several times, but she's often referred to it's Mary, the mother of, and he names one of the brothers of Jesus, right? Instead
Yeah.
of, he doesn't come out and say this is Mary, the mother of Jesus. It's like kind of obscuring her in the sense that she's not really important, or she's really the mother of his siblings, not of him, right? Like it's to me it's a slight again, kind of like because she's not there, right? When
Right.
she's far removed when he's crucified, and it's only John that has them up close and like where they start to be rehabilitated as the gospel writers, I think, kind of go on. I see that thing with the disciples. Like it seems like Matthew. I think Matthew actually I'd like a lot because he's very creative in his, but I think he's equally
Oh yeah.
dismissive of the disciples. I think Luke is a little bit less harsh. Like he softens out some things. Like
I think Luke was more of like the social chameleon.
yeah,
Just the fact that his gospel came together by interviewing eyewitnesses and those around the event. So he
well,
had
and to
some
me,
sort of social aptitude.
Luke's acts is designed to kind of bring the church together, right? It kind
Right.
of is bringing the Peter faction, the Peter James together with Paul, and it's kind of harmonizing. Like when it has the part about Peter seeing the unclean animals, right?
Right.
This goes back to Galatians, the fallout between Peter and Paul, right?
Yeah.
But whose side is it saying was the right side? It's saying Paul, right?
Well,
Because
100%.
Paul was right that they should have been able to eat together, and whereas
And Paul was
Peter's
right on a lot
initial,
of things.
but that's if right. That's we don't. The problem is we don't get Peter's part. Now you get First Peter and Second Peter. This is
Right.
where I think we would kind of. I don't think they were written by Peter, but
No. I think at best one of his contemporaries, one of the other contemporaries.
yeah.
But I don't believe that he wrote them. He might have dictated maybe portions of it.
I think they scream of Paul again. If you read First Peter and Second Peter, they are in line exactly with.
See, and I believe that of Hebrews too, but none of us can actually historically prove that it
Yeah.
was written by
Well,
Paul.
I think the majority of the New Testament is in line with Paul's theology.
Yeah.
Now, people would say, well, of course.
He
See,
wrote 13 of
this
the
is where
books.
I come up again. It's like, of course, because Paul's theology is correct. He got
Right.
it directly from the risen Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But you understand what I'm saying. It's nuanced. It's,
Oh,
yes,
100%.
but Paul was not in lockstep with everybody, and he admits it within his own letters that there was a lot of So to say that Paul's theology is absolutely the one that was correct does still require some, at least, navigation through the opposing views, and which for one would have been the group that were saying you need to be circumcised, right? So
Right.
right there, is Paul right that you don't need to be circumcised, or is Paul wrong in that, right? And so obviously 90% of Christians would say Paul was right. You
Yeah,
don't need to be
100%.
circumcised. The gospel is not, but if a Jewish Christian at that time who said, no, we need to be Torah observant, and they would have clashed, right?
Oh yeah. And that, I guess that's the funny thing about Paul is he was, for lack of a better term, I guess you would say he was like the top Jew. And for
Yeah,
him
he says he
to,
was a Pharisee and he learned under,
yeah, he was the
well,
Pharisee of
Acts says he
Pharisees. He was
learned under
circumcised on the 8th
Gamaliel.
day.
But
But if he flipped his theology, then he's either absolutely insane because he chose prison and death over continuing being rich and powerful, to flip all of his practices and theology on its head that he's spent his entire life practicing. Or something truly miraculous happened and he met with Jesus on that road to Damascus.
yeah, well, he says that all of what he learned as being a Pharisee is all, he uses basically dung, right?
Yeah.
It's like all worthless.
All of your righteousness is for filthy rags.
Yep.
And that continues with all of us.
He's like, basically everything that I learned in that is of no importance anymore.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think that's a connection of Mark with Paul and the Pharisees. I think the Pharisees, being the antagonists, is picking up on the fact that Paul was a Pharisee, right? He would have been that antagonist at one point.
I would not disagree,
right? He used to think his righteousness was in his deeds, and it is, but now Paul understands that righteousness comes through faith. Sure enough, when you read Mark, who are the people who are truly righteous? Well, none are righteous, but the ones who recognize faith in Jesus are the ones who are going to be. So,
yeah.
So they're in alignment. So that's good news, I think, for Christians. Like, because I hear a lot of people like, well, Paul's theology is different than, Mark and Matthew. I don't see much difference at all.
I don't think it's different.
I think they harmonize perfectly. You just have to read the Gospels as they can't come out and directly. See, this is, now you're going to be like, well, then what are you saying? They're not historical. They can't come out directly and put some of these things in Jesus's mouth. Firstly, it would have been like going back, like historically, Jesus, right, is existing before Paul is writing his letter. So you can't be putting Paul's direct theology in the mouth of Jesus, right?
Well,
but you also, so like Jesus has to come off as somewhat of a Torah observant Jew who,
100%.
However, he still is beneath the surface. You've got Paul. Like the Sermon on the Mount is Paul's theology. It's the law of Christ to me. When he says, when he goes through and he says, not one dot or tittle will pass. But then he says, he's going on and like a new Moses giving a new law, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So, like, this is Paul's law. Like,
I would say on the things that Jesus said, I think what he said the way he said it and who he said certain things to were 100% on purpose. He often used facsimile, hyperbole, parable, and these are things that, I mean, even if you get a couple of words wrong on the back end, that these are very memorable things. And I think that helped preserve the words of Jesus by him speaking in more code, because now you're more intrigued in everything I'm saying. So you're going to tend to remember what I said because now I'm telling it in a story. You're not going to understand the story, and that's completely cool. But I'm going to tell it in a story, and you'll never forget this story. You'll never forget the parable of the sower. Even though I think that's a terrible name for it.
Speaking of the parable of the sower, here's another one of what I think the parable of the sower is referencing. You'll probably disagree. But so the third group, right, are those that are on rocky soil, right? Now think about what Peter or what Jesus names Peter, right?
Ooh.
What does he call him?
The rock.
The rock.
That's, man.
Follow what the conditions, what happens of those who are on rocky soil. What do? It says they initially take the word with like exuberance, right?
Yeah.
And then they fall away. And it's exactly what happens to Peter at the end of Mark. He denies him. It's the whole group. I think that is a reference to Peter. If you look at, it's rocky soil, right?
Well, we're seeing a lot of it in the past couple of years here too. And you're seeing 20-year pastors. You're seeing lifelong Christians that are deconstructing. That's rocky soil.
Right. But what do you think? Do you think that's a direct reference to Peter? I think
it could be, yeah.
Yep. It's like almost like verbatim. When you read the end of Mark, it's verbatim of how they fall away, right? They were initially gun-ho for the gospel.
Yeah.
But then when they realized what it would entail following, they fell away. And that's,
well, I mean, it kind of describes him pretty perfectly because you can
because remember,
be there and listen but not understand,
because they say, well, but Peter goes on and believes and has faith. Mark has none of that. People have to realize Mark does not rehabilitate Peter. He leaves it like up to Peter to if he's going to go see Jesus in Galilee, right?
Right.
Like, it's up to you. I don't think he closes it. Like, he doesn't say Peter's damned for eternity. He doesn't say that, but he's saying it's up to Peter. The women flee. They don't tell anybody.
Yeah.
Who's going to respond to this message, right? And it's up to Peter whether he's actually going to respond to this message. And again, if you follow Paul, right, it's up to Peter whether he's going to follow what I'm saying about eating with, non-Jews and all these things. It's up to Peter whether he'll ever actually get what the true gospel is, right? Yep. He thinks he's gone ho for Jesus, but...
Well, I mean, he's kind of a testament too, because the most hard-headed, just anti-everything person can still understand it eventually.
But like, think about it. Why would Mark make that part about him calling Peter, changing Cephas to Peter, right?
Yeah.
There's a purpose with everything Mark's writing. That's what I'm saying. They're not just recording like this just happened to be said. I have no idea why it got said, right? It's important. Like those who with eyes to hear and ears to will pick up on these things, right? Then he talks about the parable of the sower, and sure enough, there's rocky soil. And then, the reader is reading it. Well, am I, part of the, well, who else might be there? Oh, wait, Rock, Peter. And that's what's fascinating with Matthew. And this is what fascinates me, like beyond belief, is that the Roman Catholic Church uses that passage to now
To include
anybody
his
who just
papacy.
studies Greek and any sees that the rock is two separate rocks, right?
Yep.
It's Petros and Petro, right?
Yeah.
So one is like a small rock or and then the other is like usually like I think used in the sense of like a larger kind of
Yeah. Foundational rock.
foundational rock, like a cornerstone,
Yeah.
right? So it says on this rock, which is Peter, right?
Yeah.
I will build.
See, now as a Protestant, I have a full different understanding of what he's saying there.
So it's
I
two
think it's
different
the
rocks.
words that Peter is saying, not Peter. Like he just happened to be the one that said the words,
Yeah,
and
so,
on Peter's words, he was building that.
But I think the second rock is Christ, right?
Correct.
The church is built on Christ. It's not built on Peter. That's just stupid. It's
Well, I mean, it goes back to the parable of building your house on sand or on rock. Obviously, Jesus is the rock that you build your house on, and it doesn't get washed away.
and if we go back to Paul, he talks about, I think, like the cornerstone.
Yeah.
So again, I think this is again like Matthew using
Speaking of Matthew, I'm going to piss a bunch of Christians off real quick. For everybody that thinks that Mary was a perpetual virgin, Matthew 125. End of story.
which one?
Matthew 125.
You think she gave up her virginity in that one?
I know she did.
Let me see. I'm trying to remember exactly.
It's going to make my Catholic friends mad, but I mean, it's there. And it's okay. It's all in love, I promise. It's a verse that is stuck in my head forever.
Matthew 125.
125.
Josephine. And he did not know her until she had brought forth her firstborn. Yeah, that right there. No, in a biblical sense is
Just saying. Yeah. Just saying.
He didn't know her. He just didn't talk to her a lot. They just got to know each other.
I bring that up every time somebody wants to talk about her being sinless, and I mean that didn't make her a sinner. They were married, but
yeah. Not a perpetual virgin.
Now you have an extra bullet in the chamber.
It's like I don't know nothing about nothing, but I do know Mary was not a perpetual virgin.
Yeah, you know, there people will die on that hill. They really will.
Roman Catholicism is an interesting
new Pharisees.
That's like I said. That verse though in Matthew, like it's still like there's times I go back and I'm like, wait, I've got to be missing something. That
I like Matthew. Matthew's kind of funny.
Strong enough to build your foundation of your church on, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
the
keys were given to Peter, and then if you read that, like it's the keys are being given to those who can bind on earth, you know, and what's bound on earth.
I think we've touched on everything except for prophecy fulfillment.
So you were talking about, so you're pre-millennialist. Post-millennialist, yeah. So yeah, so your thought is that all of those verses are pretty much 70 AD, the destruction of the temple by the Romans.
All of
Let me get your
Matthew
thoughts on
24.
this. Have you read Luke's version of it? And
Yes.
what is your so here's something I bring up in that Luke, he seems to the way I read Luke, he separates it like a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
If you read Luke, is it 22? 21 to the 21, whatever his
21.
Olivet discourses.
Yeah, it's 21.
21. So if you read his version, so if you go to like verse 21, verse 21:15. Wait, hold on. Is it 21 or 22?
That's 21. Wars and persecution. For I will give you a mouth and wisdom, which none of your adversaries will be able to withstand or contradict.
Yeah, but I'm looking for the his Olivet Discourse version, where he talks about the destruction of the temple.
Oh, that is 5. Starts at 5 to 9. 21, 5 through 9.
All right.
And they asked him, Teacher, when will these things be, and what will be the sign when these things are about to take place?
Okay. So if you go to, so 21. Oh, okay. 20, go to Luke 21:23.
21, 23.
So this is a couple verses before, but
Okay.
woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing infants in those days, for there will be great distress on the earth and with wrath against this people. So this is definitely the destruction of Jerusalem, right?
Mm-hmm.
They will fall by the edge of the sword and be taken away as captive among all nations. So that's something Josephus documents really clearly, that they were, many Jews were slaughtered, but many were also taken away as slaves and basically sold around the Roman Empire. And
Yep.
right, so
it's their exile from Jerusalem, from the land of Israel.
By the edge of the sword, be taken away as captives among the nations, and Jerusalem be trampled on by the Gentiles, which would be the Romans, right? Until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled. But then he goes on to say, there will be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, and the earth, distress among nations, confused by the roaring of the seas and waves. People will faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming on the world, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in a cloud.
Mm-hmm.
So do you read Luke in a sequential way, or because if you read Luke in a sequential order, it would appear that the destruction of the temple is way back in the verses about being taken by the sword and captive, and then you have the Son of Man coming on the clouds.
Yes. So I think Luke parses this out much better than Matthew, because Matthew 24 is it is condensed, so it's very easy to get confused. You have to look to 2 Thessalonians and Revelation to try and parse that out a little bit more. But if you're looking at Luke, and yes, it does foretell the destruction of the temple here in 5 through 9, and then We have consistent war and persecution. We are not at the destruction of Jerusalem yet. Well, the main destruction of Jerusalem. They destroyed the temple. They did not destroy the entirety of the city. So it can be read either way.
You see what I'm saying, though? Like, Josephus has the part with the captives being taken away. Is that kind of like the final cleanup to the siege of Jerusalem? And then Luke makes it sound like, and then you will see the Son of Man, almost like it's a second coming appearance, not the Jerusalem appearance.
Yeah. So I think the big problem there is it doesn't give you a frame of reference of
it doesn't.
What's the time frame in between this. Now, as eschatologically, I get asked about eschatology quite a bit. Funny enough.
Well, it's vital if Christianity is true.
But I think, and this is me personally from reading scripture, it's great to see these signs, but I think on a Christian standpoint, if you are obsessing looking for the signs, then you are putting yourself in a danger of distraction. Because we don't need to be guessing. We just need to make sure that we are living Christ's ethics. And if we're living Jesus's ethical teachings, then the end times doesn't really matter to us. Because
I think based on what you said, like you and I would agree in the Gospels, that's all done with. Whether or not it failed, or it's just talking about the destruction of Jerusalem.
Yeah.
It's either past and happened in the destruction of Jerusalem, or it's a second coming that didn't happen, right?
Well,
so one or the other, it's past in the Gospels. Now, Revelation is something different.
Yeah, that's where we talk about the third temple, understanding where we're going from there. So,
but Christians have read the Gospels as the Son of Man coming on the clouds as a second coming for a long time.
Yeah.
Now, again,
we can all be wrong.
Right. I think I think the vast majority of Christians have been wrong about most things. And I'm not holding that as I'm not saying that, like negative Christians or.
No, I said from the onset, I think we're all wrong about something.
Have read it. Like if you Google up second coming passages, you'll find those passages all over the place, right?
Yeah.
And the problem it leaves is, well, then what passages are talking about the second coming? Because if you use those up for the destruction of Jerusalem, well, now you're pretty much stuck with Revelation. And even then, you'll have preterists will argue, well, all of that happened in the siege of Jerusalem, right? They'll make sure to let you know that every single one of those have already happened. And so then you're still stuck with trying to figure out, well, what is it left? Like, what's left for the Christian still to wait for? And what passages are clearly second coming passages?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
That's true.
Now, obviously, the end of Revelation, when you see the New Jerusalem come down, but those aren't second coming passages. Those are like the final eschaton, or that's the kingdom coming, and
well, I've got a guy in my men's group that seems to be pretty obsessed with eschatology. He's always looking out for the beast, and he's looking out for 666 everywhere, and I'm like, oh, that was Nero. Like historically that was Nero, and there's debate whether that was 666 or 616.
Has he looked on an Iron Maiden album?
Man,
you can find 666.
But he's constantly asking me, and I'm like, if you are so concerned with that, you need to check your heart because you're not ready to go anyway. Like, you better hope it's not right now.
Does he take offense to it?
It's hard to, because we all fall into theological traps. I get it.
Yeah.
Like you want to know more than you actually know, but there's a reason that Jesus didn't declare. He flat out said, nobody knows but the Father, which is declaration no, not understanding no. It's the same usage of no that Paul used. I do not declare my knowledge. I'm here to listen. So it's that whole Greek thing.
So you don't get stuck in the idea that the flesh and blood Jesus didn't know things that the
no, it's a huge argument against the Trinity. And well, if they are truly one, then he would know. Well, he does know. He said no, as in I'm just basically not telling you. All right, like you don't need to worry about it. So I'm going to take Jesus's words and not worry about it.
Yeah, but then the one that trips people up is, truly I tell you, in this generation will not pass. But if that's used to just talk about 70 AD, then that did happen.
Yeah.
Right. It all hinges on what is the Son of Man coming in the clouds. What is that referring to? The problem I have too with that is that Daniel, do you 7? Consider that a second coming?
Yes. So,
but like where and elsewhere, because like in Hebrews it says like he will come a second time. I don't see anything that ever refers to like a third coming, right? Like it seems to be there's two comings, right? There's the first time he came, he was killed.
Oh, I see. No, he has not come the second time yet.
Okay, because here's the thing, I've gotten into arguments with preterists. I'm like, dude, so are you saying this is like a 1.5? What do you? Because it's like, well, he came, but he didn't really come, but he kind of came.
Yeah,
but like, I'm like, well, look, did he come or did he not? Like, is this a second coming? Because
and that's where Matthew's poorly written on this. And it's very confusing because, yes, the second coming hasn't happened yet, but the Gentiles stomping the second.
But then what was the coming on the clouds? See, that's mine.
That is I want to say that's to Daniel 7. And he came.
So do you read that as a coming down on the clouds or
Yes, off of his throne.
Okay, because I've heard people even make this argument that it's like it's not even like a coming down in judgment. Is Matthew's language and Luke's language isn't even. But then it talks about, the messengers, the angels will gather the elect.
Yeah.
At the ends of the earth. The other major problem I think that you have with eschatology is that Paul seems to believe it will happen in his lifetime.
Well,
and this would be my argument as to why I think the Gospels are saying that, because if I'm right in that the Gospel writers are essentially following Paul's lead,
and this is where I will get tripped up.
Tricky. Here's what I will say. We can wrap up on eschatology, but I think the gospel writers are aware of the destruction of Jerusalem, so they have to deal with that event.
Yeah,
I think they're using that to their advantage to obscure which event they're actually talking about. I think they're making it more mysterious, like, it's the destruction of Jerusalem, but that's really a foretelling of the second coming. But who's to say, is the second coming really coming in that lifetime? Could be 1,000 years later. This is the author of Revelation.
And this is what I would say on Paul.
1,000 years, even literal. So
Yeah.
we could be talking about, so now you've pushed out eschatology, and also Luke has things like the kingdom of God is not observable, like he kind of makes the kingdom of God now this, like it's amongst you, right? Like
This is where I
it's
will put Paul kind of off of his pedestal, is the best way to put it. Um,
yeah.
I don't necessarily think that Paul was prophesying in really anything he talked about end times, especially Second Thessalonians. I think he was doing his best to try to understand the revelation that Jesus gave him. And
But like, what about First Thessalonians? That's the, you know, we will be caught up in the air, right? He
yeah,
uses like that, we refers to him being alive then, if that's going to happen. And the whole context is that people are saying like Uncle Bob died, right? And what's going to happen now that Uncle Bob is dead and Christ hasn't returned? And then Paul's reassuring them, right? That like, one, like, don't worry, Uncle Bob will actually be caught up first, and then we will be changed
well,
right after.
it does say that even those that are sleeping will be
Right, right. So Uncle Bob's going to go first. He's,
right.
even though he died, it's actually good news, he's saying, right?
Right. Believers get to
Like
go first.
yeah, like they're going to go first, and then we who are alive, this is where he uses that language, will be caught up in the air, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, he's reassuring that the dead will rise. This is Paul's idea of resurrection. They'll be given a new body, right? A glorious new body.
Yep.
The whole flesh doesn't inherit the.
Yeah. Well, we'll
Um,
have new heaven and new earth,
yeah,
and
so a
they'll
new
be the
heaven.
same.
Paul's idea is actually like a total cosmic trans, like a cosmic. It's actually so much more than Christians even realize.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
like people don't realize what Paul's saying is that the whole cosmos is going to be transformed, and that you're going to be given an immortal body.
I mean, we're essentially going back to
Yeah.
Genesis 2.
Yep. But
That's
people have this like, I die, I go up to heaven. No, Paul's saying it's going to be this whole transformation of.
well, the earth and Eden were very separate entities, which is why you're not going to find Eden now. Eden's gone. It's without out of our reach. So from what I understand from Paul, and this is my interpretation, God will be transforming the cosmos and making all of earth the new Eden. And we will be perfected in perfect bodies, and we'll go back to Genesis 2, to
Yeah,
the original
3 to
intention.
4.
Everything will be perfect. We will eat, drink, be merry, be fruitful and multiply,
And
and
judge the angels, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because that's his whole argument about that. Why are you squabbling over petty? This guy stepped on my foot. This guy, took my food or whatever. Why are you squabbling over these things? Don't you know you'll be judging over angels, right? At some
Yeah.
point, like this is the whole ethic, and this is again what like with that Jesus is preaching. This life, everything that humans worry about and squabbled about is pointless. Like
It's even better when
it's
you
just
when you
not
start
even
looking
like.
from a Christian worldview. I'm no longer afraid of Satan, because Satan can't do. He can only ask me to do, which is great. But the whole reason he was cast out of heaven is because of me, because of humans, because God loved us more. How much more are we than what he is? And why do we give him credence? If we start thinking on a more heart base, like, I mean, the score's already tallied up. He lost, so he's just trying to take as many losers with him as possible. Don't be a loser. Like, start thinking clearly and truly live by the golden rule, which was established by Jesus.
Yeah.
And if we treat each other the way that Jesus asked us to treat each other, the world would be perfect already.
And the other verse that really makes me think Paul was definitely like, this is the end times coming, is when he talks about that for now on, act as if you have no wife, right? Or
Yeah,
possessions. Or now I've heard Christians tell me, oh, that's because the church was facing persecution at that time. And there was a lot of turmoil. But my question is, would you advise your community to act as if they have no wife or possessions if you were just facing
wife,
persecution
no.
in the human? No, you would not. But those verses are,
They're
the world
transcendent.
is coming, the end of this age. It's Paul's idea that,
Well, I would take it to a different level on that too. And this is something that I preach on all the time is stewardship. And nothing that I hold is mine.
right, it's,
Everything is God's anyway, so he
yeah,
entrusts me to be a good steward for the things that he has, including a wife.
that's the parable of the tenants, right?
Correct.
that's,
You really
that's
do
the
know your
whole
Bible.
that's the whole point of it, is that what you do with your possessions while on earth, what God has given you, is what's important, right? So the guy who
Absolutely.
only gets one coin can make more of that than the guy who gets 100, but squabbles it and buries it or whatever.
I, God can do more with the lint in my pocket than I can do with $10 billion.
Yeah,
I can vouch for that every day of the week because it's more than about possessions and comfort, and there's more to life than things.
so that would be my argument about the imminence. I see that all over the New Testament, even like something like the Epistle of James at the end, where he talks about the rich, right? That their
Yeah.
day of slaughter is coming. And now you can read that Jerusalem. See, that's what the siege of Jerusalem has given all those passages a possible alternate explanation.
Yeah.
But again, I would challenge that letter, the Epistle of James, is written to the all of like the Jews living in the empires, and not just those in Jerusalem. And so I would say that's a message for every rich Jew, right? Or
Oh,
rich follower
100%.
or whoever who's, it's like a message of, your day of judgment is coming.
I mean, Scrooge is
Woe to you,
kind of Ebenezer Scrooge is a perfect example of that. Like sometimes even if you have everything, you have nothing, and it takes a life altering experience to change that. Now, in
Yep.
that story, it was three ghosts, which is strange because Father, Son, Holy Spirit. It was still a Christian story, and you can't tell me otherwise. I don't care.
Yep.
But
So I guess I think, like, going all about and connecting it to the beginning, I think Christian ethics have been badly mutilated and not followed. And like, I'm currently studying really in depth, like,
yeah,
nonviolent ethics of Jesus and the earliest Christians,
yeah,
and they're in lockstep to say that, any killing is forbidden, even in the form, even like under the guise of being in the government role or
yeah,
the like authoritarian role. They're like united on that. Anyone who studies the early church fathers, they're not united on everything. That's one thing that they're in lockstep on. That, you're not to use the sword in any way. You
yeah,
live by the sword, you die by the sword. I think that's a message in the New Testament that's pretty clear, that Jesus says, despite, again, Christians interpreting passages like the Luke passage about getting two swords. That's my favorite.
yeah.
I love that passage because it's so badly misunderstood that it's like,
I would say for anybody that is that has gone through any sort of church hurt, or they see the way that some Christians around them act. I think one of the most powerful things I've ever heard in that respect, I want to say it was Frank Turek. I could be wrong on this, but uh, whoever the quote was, I'm pretty sure it was Dr. Frank Turek. But he said, if I play Beethoven badly, is it my fault or is it Beethoven's fault? And I think that's the perfect way to put that, because we all go to church because church is a hospital for our souls, and you don't go to a hospital if you're not sick. We're all sinners, and we all need to do better and try to live those ethics. And one of the top ways I found is through accountability partners and life groups, people that you're actually doing life with and doing and getting in lockstep together, figuring out how to do this the right way.
Right. Do you think, though, can that be like, because again, in studying nonviolent ethics and like the Anabaptist movement, one of their major challenges to, like, more of a mainstream Christian ideology is obviously separation of church and state, like a
Mm-hmm.
strict separation. And the fact that being a member of a church is purely voluntary. Like, you as the Christian are choosing to attend this church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you choose to attend this church, you are saying, I am upholding the ethics that Jesus taught, or to the best of my ability, I'm looking to uphold, right? I think sometimes this idea, and like Luther talked about, that the church was just full of non-believers, and like,
Yeah.
but there was nothing, like, he initially wanted to actually establish a real church that really was full of like people that would uphold Jesus's ethics, and
Oh yeah.
he found that that was just not feasible. Like, there were just too many people that, and then when state and church become aligned, now you've corrupted the church, right? Like, the state is
I
doing the
agree.
bidding of the church is winking at the state. And so for me, I do think if I was to become a Christian, it would be in that Anabaptist type, like, the church is solitary, it makes its own decisions.
I agree.
There is a role for government, but the government's role is not to uphold the church's teachings, or it's just to offer civil authority for everybody that lives in that area, right?
I would say, even as a Christian, I would love to see everybody take on Christian values and live those out. I would.
But is that even feasible? If everybody lived like a Christian, actually, could you really even establish like a like without protection of a non-Christian government? Like, because that's the problem. Like, with the Anabaptist type, they could make communities, Mennonites and Quakers and um, Amish, and but it still requires a protection. Like, the
Right.
earliest Christians had the Roman Empire, right, as the
Exactly.
protector. Because otherwise, then you have to compromise as a Christian and be part of the government apparatus that also kills and also goes to war. And you get what I'm saying? Like, and that's where the Anabaptists
Yeah.
separate, because they were refused to be part of anything that was not following
Yeah,
Christ's
I
ethics.
think if you go to extreme nonviolence, which I don't disagree with, I think that's 100%. It should be voluntary. I think the most dangerous thing we could ask for is a theocracy.
Right. Because
But
it compromises the church.
right.
That's what, and see, I agree. Like, a lot of atheists are like, separation in church and state because you don't want church stuff. it's just as beneficial, if not more. Real Christians actually understand that they
Yes.
don't want the state interfering with their theology, and
No, they just want to be left alone.
like so, and that would be, you know, those separatists. We want our church, it's voluntary, right? One, and this is where the Anabaptist issue happens, where we want people to come in and voluntarily baptize themselves
Hmm.
or be baptized, right? By choice, not by compulsion when they're a baby. And like, so,
Yeah, I personally don't believe in infant baptism. I truly believe that it is 100% a personal choice that you should be making. So I mean, I'd have to lean with you on that.
yeah.
Um,
And I think, you know, there are a lot of like Christians who still, you know, they agree with that, but it's like, but not for the reasons that you know the
yeah,
Anabaptist issue was. It was because of strictly we need this to be the choice of the member of the church, right?
yeah,
It's cannot be by compulsion, because otherwise now you're not really a true follower of Christ and you're in our church. Now we have to, you know, do the discipline. They had the problem of, well, what do you do with the children, though, of true believers? Well, then they have to be kind of like wait to see where they, you know, stood. But that's the thing. If it's truly voluntary, then they can leave, right? And that's what,
and
like,
that's where some spirit of discernment comes
yeah,
into. I mean, in all honesty, I've been to churches that I can walk in and sit next to somebody who's been going to that same church for 50 years, and they never met Christ. And that's, I think it's a culture thing. It's because we were built on Christian principles. Everybody's just very comfortable saying, well, yeah, I'm a Christian. Well, do you go to church? I went like 12 years ago.
but see, like, that's where then, you know, that persecution, that's where then, even with the Reformation, Lutherans felt, you know, obligated to persecute those who weren't going to be part of the state church, you know,
Right.
for like, now you've offered a justification for Christians to persecute other Christians, which to me is the exact opposite of what a Christian should be doing. But this started
Absolutely.
under the time of Constantine, and that's why I was back to, this is where this justification starts to creep in, right? Because
Yeah.
if everybody has to be part of the Roman Catholic Church, or it's in your interest to be so, right? It's kind of like Constantine wasn't that initially. Like, he allowed pagans and Jews, and, you know, it's a,
Yeah.
but then Theodosius comes in. It's like it's a crime if you are not part of the Roman Catholic Church. Now we have this idea that we can compulsive, you know, by compulsion bring you in, and Augustine adopts this idea too, that it's
Yep.
loving, it's not loving to not do that, right? Like it's unloving. I probably misspoke. It's unloving to not bring somebody in for their salvation. And this is the issue with the Donatists, right? They were like saying, like, well, no, you know, to be part of our church, you have to truly be, you know, and Augustine, I think, takes again this like kind of secondary, no, you need to get people into the church. Then we worry about fixing them and getting them, where it's
Well,
the opposite of where
here's,
the,
I guess here's where I stand on that.
yeah,
My complete understanding is knowing that I will maybe 1% of the time get to see the harvest. I am the seed sower, and whatever happens from there is God's will, not mine, no matter what be done. But my job is basically Jesus's secretary. I'm gonna give the invitation that's already been written before you were born. And I'm going to keep giving that invitation. And then either you're going to come or you're not. It's not up to me. I can't change your heart. And I think that's where the Roman Catholics got it very, very misconstrued then, is as men, we are not to change the hearts of people. That's not our job. We can't do it. We never will be able to do it. So,
But see, that's where when you bring in the political element, that's where it becomes corrupted.
yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I think the reformers fell into the same problem, because Luther needed the protection of the ruling magistrates,
Yeah.
and he could not separate again. So he just switched one authority for another.
Yeah.
He couldn't, to the point where he was literally persecuting, not him directly, but like a lot of his later followers, the very people that he would say, if you sat him down, were actually true Christians.
Right.
But they weren't willing to, and that schism was a problem politically.
Well, yeah, it's almost bending the knee to someone other than Christ. And yeah, if you're a true Christian, you shouldn't.
It shouldn't be. It should, so if 50% of the population is non-Christian, then so be it.
Yeah.
If the 50% that are would be members of a church that would be held accountable. So I'm bringing all this up because me as a non-Christian, I would have so much more respect for people who say, I'm a Christian, if I actually could believe. Now, some of them I think do try to go and actually uphold, but so many of them within the course of my conversation, I can tell they're not in any way.
It's a very hard walk. And I will give anybody credit, but perseverance, I mean, back to Paul, perseverance is key there. If you're not persevering, then you're not actually doing the walk.
And they also don't study. Like, I have this friend, so his mother is like deep into Roman Catholicism. She writes like study Bibles. She goes on trips to Rome to visit the Pope and all this. Like, she's done these talk shows. So he finally, like after 20 years, finally says, oh, well, now he's converted to Roman Catholicism. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. So, but within a conversation of an hour, I find that he's much more interested in watching the latest movies that come out that he's interested in, reading, whatever. In other words, reading the Bible is a total chore that he spends maybe an hour a week doing, or 2 hours. And I question him, like, dude, how can you say that you are a part of a church and not have enough interest to even read through like so you're saying you're a Roman Catholic. So in other words, you're saying you think this is the word of God that was dictated you, and you're not interested enough to even read it through. Like, the two don't make any sense to me. They're conflicting, and do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like I can't believe the one and accept the other. If that's actually, now I can, because I now better understand that there are just people that just like it. And you know what his is? It's probably to please his mother to get off. And now he's going to claim the title of being a Roman Catholic,
Well, you'll know them by their fruit, and you really will. And daily saturation in scripture, daily prayer leads to that gentleness and kindness. And it's not Aquinas. Maybe it is Aquinas. He once said, always be preaching, do so with words if necessary. It's not Aquinas. That's going to make me mad. I know who it is. It's an early church father. But that is the true nature of what you strive to be as a Christian. Like, I should be shining my light on the lampstand, at all times. I should not be hiding it under. And there are,
Yep.
I'd say probably 70%, and that may even be a little low, to be honest. 70% of Christians have no daily Bible plan. They don't saturate themselves in prayer and scripture, and they just don't get in.
And then the reverse I used to bring up to him was his mother being in the position she is. I was like, why is she not hounding you
Mm-hmm.
day in and day out about converting to, like, I think it was Penn and Teller, and I don't really care, but they did say something that was, it's like if someone's house is on fire and you're not telling them about it,
Yeah.
how much do you really love that person? That, like it's one of those things, like, if she really truly believes
Well,
that you are going to be lost for eternity by not bring. Now, I get there's different strategies. Like if you're constantly on somebody, that could turn them. But there are certainly ways to do it that are more than just, oh, well, he's going to find his own way. It's like,
the scripture that I've lived my life by right now is 1 Peter 3:15. But sanctify first Christ in your heart as Lord, and always be ready to stand in defense to give a reason for the hope that is within you, but do so with gentleness and respect. And I think those in that order, I've set Christ apart. I know he is my Lord. I have my testimony. I have my witness. I have my identity. I have my understanding, and I'm ready to talk to anybody at any given certain point. But I also want to do so in a way that doesn't, it may offend people, because the gospel's, if you're living your life outside of the gospel, it's the most offensive thing you can read. But I want to make sure that they understand that wherever they're at on the journey, I'm here to help. I mean, I don't care if I talk to you today and then 5 years from now, you're like, okay, I'm ready to give this thing a shot. Let's see what we can do. Cool. Great. Let's go. But I think hounding somebody, depending on the person, I mean, the person has a lot to do with it. I think there's a big disconnect there, because some people are like, well, I don't want to Bible thump them. And then there are other people who only want to Bible thump.
yeah. Well, that's the thing. That's what I think is funny, is that it is a personality, because like there are believers who are less interested in reading the Bible, obviously,
Yeah.
than there's certain like it is like there are some people that are fine with hey, I've got an authority that tells me this is I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, that's so against my personality and just the way I could not accept that. So, like for me, it would have to be questioning everything, asking, researching, and like, so I have to factor that in when I'm thinking about. But again, I just can't, like. I think there was like an atheist, Scott Barnum, he, like, the
Oh,
start
Bart
of his
Ehrman, yeah.
course, he asked people like, how many have read all of Harry Potter, and they all raised their hand.
Hmm.
And then how many have read the whole Bible, and like only like a quarter of them, but they half of them claim to be Christians or
Yep.
more than that.
And that's the funny part, is most atheists know more about Christian doctrine than most Christians do. Well,
yeah, and that's
Christian.
well, and I think if you're an atheist, or you should be informed of the
Mhm.
thing that you're against, that you're, not necessarily against, but the thing that you're not accepting, as because you can just as equally not accept something on very poor grounds, like a lot of atheist arguments are really bad,
Yeah.
like that's not a good reason to not, you may not accept it, but
Well, I
you
think
might want to come up with some better.
I really think there's only two types of people that, when they're done reading the Bible, they either go the atheist route or they go the Christian route. And I think it's how they read it in the first place. I think if you're looking for yourself in the Bible, you'll find yourself at the end. But if you're looking for God in the Bible, you'll find him. I think it's who you're looking for when you start out and how you digest scripture.
Yeah, it's well, and that's like a whole, the Christian God. That's an, to me, it's a narrow concept of God. It doesn't encompass just what does God mean? Gods have existed for
Oh, we got tiny little
you know,
brains for
this
trying to understand that.
moment. Yeah, the first human was able to comprehend,
Yeah.
and so just, and I think, reading the Bible too, the conception of God changes, like
Mm-hmm.
and that is offense. Some Christians take offense, right? When I say that, they think I mean like it's inconsistent, or it's like no, like it's like if you look at the Israelite deity Yahweh, much different than the Platonic, you know, God of later
Mm-hmm.
Christian theologians. And, I mean, it's just, they'll say it's not different, but one is,
Well, I think I
it's a
think it's what we try to
conception.
fit hit.
It's
I think it's what we try to fit God into our understanding.
right. And that's what the argument would be, that the way we conceive of it has developed, and, God never changes. God is God, and we perceive him differently,
Mm-hmm.
but like the Israelites perceived God as a deity who makes a pact with them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And is given them as a nation to, yeah, they have to conceptualize this as this is also the God of the entire universe.
I mean, to be
They
fair,
didn't have the concept of universe, but the whole earth, like
we
it's,
have the same thing today. I mean, Christians believe that our God made a pact with us, except this time he came to deliver the message in person.
yeah, but like I think in the ancient Near East, it was, like the idea was not exclusive, in the sense that like every people, and the Bible's clear about that, have their own ruling deities,
Right.
like, now the Bible stresses it in the sense that those deities are either without power, limited in power, or subservient to Yahweh. Or
Yep.
Christians read it different ways. Some read it as they don't actually exist. They're just wooden statues that all the way to they exist, but they are lower on the totem pole than Yahweh. And, I think the New Old Testament basically says that these deities exist,
Yeah.
but that they are inferior to Yahweh. And, they're part of the council, or they were at one point, but then they were lowered, in Psalms where it says, you will die like men. And that depends on what reading you give to that, because no one can agree on whether that's talking about,
Yeah, getting
actual
into
deities or men. Or, but like if you read like Michael Heiser's stuff, have you read
I
his?
loved Michael Heiser.
Right.
Well,
So,
the late Michael Heiser, bless his
and I
soul.
love the way he reads the scriptures, because like
Yes.
he does take a very supernatural, like, and I think that's how it should be read. I think that's how it was initially understood, at least
Oh yeah.
mostly,
Well, yeah, we keep trying to fit God in this box that we understand, and he doesn't fit in the box.
I mean, the nations were divided. Each nation had its own ruling deity, and
Mm-hmm.
then the whole idea from Michael Heiser is that it's bringing it all back under control of Yahweh, right?
Yeah.
there's clearly this idea within Paul about fighting the archons and the ruling authorities and the spiritual powers, and it's all over the Bible. Like
Yeah.
these, and early Christians were right in lockstep with that, that the foreign gods were demons, and
Well, and I think
like,
that's where the defining difference between Christians and all other supernatural is our understanding of the afterlife and uh, good and evil leads us to ghosts. That's not a thing. You got demons and angels that talk to you from beyond the veil. Um, and I'm still kind of growing into that.
yeah, and I think that's where I come from.
Yeah.
So that's when I said I'm not an atheist, because I have studied other religions. I've
Hmm.
studied the occult and stuff, and like, so like that's why I'm used to that world.
Yeah.
Christianity is not attractive to me because of that. In fact, it's one of the attractive elements of it. It's
Yeah,
just
it's very different. And
like
my surface level of Christianity understanding when I was a kid, I,
none of that is, and
oh
that's the
man.
shame of it. Like you could hook kids into, like, if they actually thought they were going to battle against, like, but they don't. Like it's so under, like, just, like, there's this guy Jesus, he
We're
died,
doing
he
a disservice by not telling
yeah,
the full
like it's like
truth.
explain the worldview. Like the pastor could start by not even, like, it's like a basketball coach doesn't even show the players the ball
Hmm.
before for like 2 weeks. It's like I'm even going to talk about Jesus for weeks until I explain to you the world Jesus lived in.
I will tell you this: I would refuse to go to a church and stay at that church if we didn't talk about Jesus and read scripture from the Bible every single week that I went. And now, granted, I'm at my church like 4 nights a week, but
Yeah. But I mean, explain to people, what does the world that Paul lived in look like?
yeah,
Like they did believe there were spiritual powers at work all around them, and that humans were operating under the control, of,
yeah.
so like there you go, this is the whole idea that Jesus is coming to defeat these powers, like these powers have a hold over humans. Doesn't give you an excuse to act like an asshole, but
Right.
but it's
Well,
but these ruling powers and archons, and
and just like we couldn't have true free will without choice, we wouldn't also have consequence and free will without an agent on the opposite side. So good and evil supernaturally both exist. I mean, it's undeniable. And there's evidence just coming out of everybody's ears on the subject. And people are so interested across everything on what it means.
so like, what is your view, or what's your thought, like, on the apocalyptic? Would you agree that, like, the New Testament has this, like, apocalyptic view that God will come and eventually defeat the powers of evil and the forces that, are ruling this world, right? Like
Oh,
Paul points
absolutely.
out that Satan is the ruler of this world. Interestingly, though, like Gnostic can read that as Yahweh is actually the ruler of this world that's blinding believers, and but that's an interesting passage. But but so Satan's ruling this world, right? He's in power, he's blinding. So the obvious question is, the taps into the problem of evil, is why does God allow, if he can overthrow these ruling authorities, why is he waiting so long to do so? And that ties into the 2000 year, when is Jesus coming back? Like, why even in Revelation is he going to release Satan, for another, like,
So, short
like
answer?
the skeptic, not that I'm a skeptic, could say this is retrofitting what the reality is that yes, life can suck. Life is shit at times. Or bad things happen for whatever reason. Maybe there are
So,
powers that are controlling you. So
two
why
things.
doesn't God do something about it? You know?
Two things. Number one, um, my favorite thing when it comes to the problem of evil is people saying, well, if God loves us so much, why would he let us burn in hell for eternity? The good news is you won't, because I mean everything gets destroyed in the lake of fire that doesn't commune with
So
God.
you're an annihilationist.
Yeah, so you won't,
Yeah.
it's not eternity.
Right.
Eventually you just disappear and it's great. um
That's the part of like the eternity and hellfire doesn't make sense, because like why are you being granted immortality then to burn forever? Like
yeah,
the
no,
whole
they,
point is you don't get immortality, right?
yep.
If you don't believe in that.
But on the other side of that, it's the short answer is the reason, in my mind, why
Yeah.
God hasn't come back yet and just destroyed all the evil is he going to start with you and me right now? Because nobody can be in the presence of God with even a speck of sin on them. That's why Jesus came.
So he
So,
would have to destroy everything, is what you're saying.
well, he's preparing a house, and if we are truly trying to become the bride of Christ as the church, he's going he's going to give us time to prepare
But
ourselves.
but isn't that like a second Peter argument where he says, the time frame of God is different than man? It's like almost like an apologetic within already in the New Testament. Like
Yeah, I
you've got
personally,
scoffers saying that Jesus hasn't returned, right? And he's like, but wait, just remember, a year of the Lord is like 1,000 years, right? And that the Lord doesn't, he doesn't waste time, and he's actually wanting more people to come in, right, and be saved. And the problem with that argument is you can reverse that thinking that more people are lost as well, right? Like,
yeah,
so
I
if you're
and
saving more, you're also losing more. Like,
truly, yeah,
yep.
and there's a huge there's
So that doesn't
fantastic
explain it
amount.
either. Like, so that like, in other words, whoever would accept Christ right at this moment, if you wait 20 years from now, more will be lost, more will be saved, but can't God save everybody anyway? Like, what would God do with the unborn? Wouldn't they just be saved anyway?
Yeah,
They would just never exist. So,
children are kind of, I don't want to say grandfathered in because that's a poor term.
yeah.
But children's innocence, which is why Jesus constantly preached on childlike faith, and children have a natural disposition towards belief in God and faith. We start teaching them out of that, like, well, no, this is why this happens. Everything is magical to them when they're children, and you can start seeing that transition right around 8, 8, 9, and they start losing their innocence. Maybe because of an accelerated world, but um, it does say that children will be with Christ. So children, I'm not as concerned with. I think it's our own stubborn hearts,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too in the Gospels where he talks about, the children, I think I would make the case too that's going back to Paul, because Paul uses the language of children, but he's
Hmm.
referring to like new believers or young believers who are like, like young and inexperienced. And I think that's what Jesus, I think it's supposed to sound like children in the gospel, but it's
Yeah.
don't put a stumbling block in front of those who are trying to come to me that aren't worldly and
Well, I mean,
right,
essentially, new
like,
believers are
yeah,
actually children because we're new
right. So
creations in Christ.
yeah, yeah,
Not changed
they're
creations, new creations.
right. They don't have all the sin nature that they
Yeah. And we have to we start fresh and we need to keep it going.
but yeah, I was talking about more like those who aren't born yet.
Oh yeah.
So like, I mean, wouldn't those who aren't born just would either never exist or be given a place in the kingdom, right?
Yeah, they would.
So the
And they're
whole
fully
idea
innocent.
that you're waiting for more people to be saved seems like there seems to be a net negative rather than a net. Do you understand what I'm saying? Like
Mhm.
only more can be lost if God just doesn't save those who. Now, if you're a Calvinist, you'll argue that he's
Yeah.
already pre-selected, right? Those who are going to be saved, and
And maybe he's honestly waiting for all of us idiots down
right,
here
it
to stop
might be
trying to
this
figure it
guy
out.
like Bob Smith. He's got going to be born 1,000 years from now. He's one of the elect, and he's like, we're waiting on Bob. Like he's holding up the whole show. Like everybody, that would be funny, and it like at like let's say there's like 1,000,000 2,000,000,004 people that are elect. We've got 2,000,000,003 have already been accounted for. And there's this one guy who's holding up the entire show, He's like, we gotta wait for him. And he won't do it right away, too. The annoying part is Bob's gonna be an atheist for like most of his life. And then on the final deathbed, he'll come to God will zap the Holy Spirit at him, and he'll come to be saved. And
Yeah.
then, right, and then Jesus can return. And
See, my big push for everybody is I just check your heart in 20-second increments. If you're ready, you'll be ready. And it doesn't matter if you die naturally or if Jesus comes back in 20 seconds, you're ready. Live it out though. Actually do the walk. Everybody can read the Bible, everybody can pretend to understand its words, but walking that walk is a whole different thing. And I'm just as imperfect as Paul was. If if he was the chief of all sinners, then I'm the chief's executive assistant.
Paul's an interesting fella.
Mm-hmm.
So he'll like down himself, and then on the other hand, he'll be like, you must follow me. Like I am, if I come, I am wielding authority. And yeah, it's like and then the times where he just openly gets pissed off and
Yeah, I mean that shows his human side.
well,
It wasn't Jesus's righteous anger. It was just
where he says that he wished they would just be castrated.
yeah. I mean that is yeah yeah. I'm imperfect too.
Yeah. I think Galatians, what's interesting about that too, I'm trying to remember what book, but it might be James Tabor, somebody, but they argue kind of that like Paul's in um conflict too with like other like visionaries, like people that are claiming to have also had communication with Jesus. And because Paul goes like really like he goes out of his way to when he talks about being brought up to the third heaven,
Yeah.
it's almost like he's having to defend himself, like against like people that are claiming authority as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because he talks about like even if an angel of light comes, and
I mean, we have lots and lots of false prophets now, so
yeah, so he's definitely, it's not just these Jewish Christians who are saying you have to be circumcised. I think there's spiritual, like, prophets and stuff coming and
yeah.
saying, I have actually spoken to the real risen Jesus, and they're trying to infect the congregation, and
John Smith, Brigham
but
Young.
how do we tell who's true? And that would be mine. Like, how do we tell if Paul's actually truthful, or if Bob Smith is truthful, or if, like, Paul wrote, his writings were the ones who got handed down? But
I mean, I think that's where discernment and understanding your Bible come in. If you read and truly read to understand the entirety of the Bible, you understand what God's nature is. And that's the one thing that we can absolutely pull out of the Bible, is understanding what God's nature is. And whatever teaching is contradictory to what God's nature is, it is false.
there's a scholar who, I forget her name. I haven't read her book yet, but I need to, I think her name's Lena something. Anyway, but she proposes that Paul's letters are actually not written at all by Paul, that they're
Hmm.
actually, she says that they're actually like um her hypothesis is that Acts was the first document, and that Paul's letters were written based off of Acts, and they were just like writing under the character of Paul, Saul, Paul, and
Hmm.
then like the whole New Testament was constructed, because if you look at Acts, you get all the key characters, right? You could construct the first Peter, second Peter, you could write under the name of Paul, you could write under the name. That's her hypothesis, but she goes through the book. Again, I haven't read the book, but I saw an interview, a couple with her, that in, Greco-Roman literature, there's tons of literature written under the name of somebody that actually didn't write it. It's like
Right.
pseudepigrapha, like there's, the Bible scholars say that certain things in the New Testament, like we were talking about First Peter and Second Peter, and are written under the name, the authority of a person. But
Yeah.
it's an interesting hypothesis, because her whole thing then would be that Paul's letters don't come first, whereas that's just standard. Like,
Yeah.
even critical scholars often believe that Paul wrote first, and then the
Or at
gospel.
least was in the process of writing when
Yeah,
Mark
then the
came.
gospels follow. But her hypothesis would be that Acts was written first. That's just this narrative of the church.
Yeah.
Then off of that, you get all the literature that surrounds the New Testament, and
That'll be I might actually have to read that.
it'd be an interesting. Yeah, I haven't. I need to get the book just to see, like, because I want to see like what other things she cites that were other Greco-Roman literature. That,
Yeah.
like, she named some stuff, but I'm not. I didn't know enough about like some of the other sources to know. But how would you prove? I mean, proving that is,
Oh yeah.
you would never, unless
Ow.
and it goes such against, what's just accepted
Oh yeah. And
scholarship at this point. That
I think that's a crux of a lot of Christians, is they don't want to question, they don't want to stand out. I mean, God says in the Old Testament, "Come, let us reason together." So we have, to quote Cliff Connectley here, we have rational minds for a reason. and we should use our rational minds to build evidence-based faith.
But so, like, going back to what I started with, can a non-Christian read the New Testament without the guidance of the Holy Spirit in a correct way?
I don't think they would get understanding in.
So do you think like I would be incapable of understanding the deepest truths, or because of because I'll tell you, when I read it, I really try to put myself in the eyes of like a believer. Like when I'm trying to read it.
Well, I guess that's where one of the big separations is knowledge and understanding can live in two separate zones.
Right. And that's where the faith comes in.
Right.
But that's why I was saying, is it really an intellectual, like it's just logical, or is it really mostly, or at least a large part, faith with
I think a lot of it is faith. And
yeah.
I mean, I guess that also goes back to understanding the author.
Because like let's just say we look at something, as that the most over talked about, like the resurrection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I said to you, all right, give me evidence, give me proof, right? At this point in time, it would be unreasonable for me to expect that you could offer some sort of like actual physical evidence or
Oh,
some,
right.
like you just wouldn't be able to. And Christians coming to believe in Jesus, they're not coming because they've looked at artifacts and have discovered that that did actually happen, right?
Well, you're right.
So just right
Most
on
of
that
us,
point, they're coming to it from a faith claim.
right,
Now, that doesn't mean there's no evidence to support it, right?
right.
So I agree with when Christians say that doesn't mean it's without like testimony as evidence, like having a gospel and right, like
Yeah.
it might not be credible evidence, it's evidence, it's like having a witness in court who might have been drunk that night and smoking pot, and he's a witness. It doesn't mean he's good or he's credible, but like it is evidence, and Christians place a lot of stock into it because it's
Hmm.
literally the word of God, right? So like
I think
it's all
most
the
of
evidence
us,
you need from a Christian point of view, right?
I think most of us base our actual faith when we take that leap to say yes. I mean, the evidence behind historicity is fantastic, but I think that personal experience is, I mean, Jesus was just kind of a name before. Now I've met the guy. Like my life has exponentially changed for the better inside and out. I'm not perfect and I do absolutely stumble, but I have this sense of peace and understanding. I'm a better father, I'm a better husband, I'm a better friend, and I wasn't able to do that myself. Like something changed in me and I get to live in that every day.
And like, wouldn't you say that the New Testament is stressing, like I was saying before, that faith obviously is Paul's one of his linchpin, I would say. But throughout the New Testament, like Matthew has when Jesus appears to them on the mountain, it says some and some didn't believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Some doubted, right? So
Yeah.
that's atheists jump on that. See, some didn't believe, but that's Matthew stressing that it's a faith thing. It's to
Yeah.
me, it's what he's saying is by faith is what saves you, and what see some didn't believe. They even saw him and they still doubted. Then you have the Gospel of Luke, right, with Thomas, right,
Yeah.
doubting Thomas, and Um, not only can he stick his fingers right, like in the side, and but then Jesus makes his comment that those who haven't seen me, right, or been able to test it, like by not seeing. I forget exactly what he says, but
Blessed
basically,
are
like,
those who haven't seen me and still
yeah,
believe,
those
for
who
they
haven't
truly are
seen, right?
blessed.
So, like, he's actually putting more weight on those who come to faith without
Yeah.
actually having been able to see it. So without a doubt, there's this element of faith that's always stressed that, like, it's not, there's going to be this bridge and divide between,
Oh, 100%.
like the New Testament never is claiming to fill in all the, right? It's like it's actually leaving it. Like Mark's whole point is, do you have faith that Jesus is going to show up in Galilee, right? Isn't that it?
Yeah,
Like,
pretty much.
it's leaving it to the reader to be the one who
And
decides, right?
there
Is that
is,
enough,
the faith has to be internal. Like, the way that people can and will change through Christianity, true Christianity, not just going to church and clapping your hands and reading a hymn here and there. Like, true Christianity and walking it out
Yeah.
is a huge blessing. And I know many men that are in our life group right now that are on the fence. This last summer we had 7. So my entire life group, we're split into 3 different sections. There's a grand total of like 37 of us and growing, but we split into usually groups 12ish. Um, and I think there were 7 baptized this last summer because
Mm.
they found a men's group and it changed their lives, saved their lives. I've seen drug addicts completely changed. I've seen thieves. I've seen literal wife beaters. I mean, I've seen people that have absolutely changed everything around. One of my closest friends now is a gambling addict to the point where about a year and a half ago, they were looking for him because he was in too much debt. They were going to get him and his daughter. And
Mm.
he absolutely outstanding man now. I mean, he's in youth ministry. It's just the way that I've seen the Holy Spirit move and change people is one of the
Yeah.
biggest testimonies I can ever give. It's amazing.
Well, and that's the gospel says, but I think the hang up, right, for many people would be like, you do have to, as Jesus says, like, the hating your mother or father, like you have to give up things that many people wouldn't give up.
If you're in your
Like,
comfort zone, you're doing it wrong.
there's people who just can't give up their job. They're, like they really, and that goes back to Eusebius when he talked about the 2 different types, right? You have the one who, but his is extreme. It's
Oh
like
yeah.
celibacy, like no usury, like it's total, monkish, like, and then the other one is the practical, worldly, you know, but it had to exist, like for the church to exist.
Yeah.
You couldn't have a bunch of celibate monks. The population would either never go for that or it just wasn't feasibly possible to,
Yeah. I
so
mean, even Paul said it's better for you not to take a wife, but if you can't
right,
control your own
right,
desires, then
right. And that's interesting because Eusebius puts that into like the first order Christian, where I think he's wrong in that, because according to Paul, you can marry
yeah.
and still,
Well, as
yet it's the priority would be to not have the wife. Like, you would be better to not, and that's where Matthew talks about the eunuch, right? That's the
I would
same idea
say,
as Paul's.
I would say as a Christian man, that leads Christian men, the most important thing is to be a husband and be a father, because that is your own personal ministry. It leads you to your scripture saturation in your prayer, because it has to be a daily thing. You cannot call yourself a Christian husband or a Christian father and not be the pastor at home. Every Christian is a pastor.
What if it brings you to worldly affairs and conflicts, and
then you have too much time on your hands. and we're all imperfect, don't get me wrong. And every single one of us does stupid route, stuff. Right? Yeah.
But then Paul said, better to marry than to burn.
Right.
So, but that's another funny thing, is that I think most guys are like, marry or not? Which option? That's not a hard one. I think.
Right.
You know, like, how many guys seriously that aren't going to go into the priesthood are like, thanks, Paul. That's a good challenge. Let me think about that one.
Yeah, I think there's doctrinally some problems across the board. Every denomination, a denomination is literally just a separation in interpretation on minor things. Like, we all have the same core doctrine. We all understand the same thing. It's just a shame that we fight about stupid stuff.
I do think, like, yeah, you know, the Bible is difficult at times. But on the other hand, I do think a lot of it is just people don't want to follow the things. Like, I don't see any confusion with Luke's lending, expecting nothing in return. Mm-hmm. That's pretty, like, straightforward to me. Now, a Christian will say, well, I want to look at the Greek. Okay, let's look at the Greek. Lend expecting nothing in return. Let's look at the translation. You know, and they want to, like, recontextualize it. It's, you know, obviously I can work at the bank still, and, you know, because I'm in my role as a bank employee at that. I'm not lending as a personal. When I'm personally there, I give, you know, my friend something and don't give them in return. But, you know, like, it's everything has to be, like, smoothed over to the, you know, like, it's just,
well, it all goes back to the same thing. We just don't want to be told what to do. That's it.
Yeah,
you're not my dad. Well, yeah, he is, but I mean,
but I've gotten, like, the interpretations of the Sermon on the Mount. Well, that was civil. That didn't have to do with, like, you know, like an individual Christian, or the opposite. I've had both sides. Like, this is, like, how you're to operate as an individual Christian, but it's fine, you know, if you're part of the ruling authorities, then you don't really have to follow Jesus's, even though, but then I bring up, but then that makes you a part-time Christian. Like,
yeah.
So do you clock out your Christian membership when you go to work, you know, in the prison system or whatever, and, you know, and do whatever the thing is that violates Jesus's ethics? And then when you're off the clock, you're back on as the, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, you know, like, that's not how the early Christians read it. It was like one or the other. You're either in the kingdom or you're not, right? It's like,
yeah, Jesus said it perfectly. I don't see where either one of those translations or interpretations comes in, because
I probably didn't explain it well, but
oh no, I know what you're saying, because I've heard some of the arguments on that.
There's so many different, like,
but narrow is the path.
You know, there's also the reading that it's like Jesus knew these were ethics that nobody could actually achieve. Mm-hmm. So it was just like a measuring bar. And he knew you would never be able to do it, and don't even bother really trying. It's just so you knew you would need him as your savior. Like those kind of cop-outs that make it like, so that I really don't have to do anything because Jesus knew I wouldn't be able to. That's like they don't say that, but really what they're saying is, well, this is just too hard. Of course, if I hate somebody, or I'm angry and that's murder, well, that can't be, like,
No, I'm just gonna say
so
I'm
Jesus
sorry. I'm
just
gonna go
knows that I'm
reconcile.
gonna be hating people and he's gonna, like, but then when you read, like, okay, well then read the parable of like the forgiveness, the one about the king, right? Who asks
Yeah.
to get to be paid back, and then the slave who asks for his and like,
Forgiveness is the hardest thing about
yeah,
all
that's
of
all
Christianity.
throughout. Yeah. Like Peter says, how often or how much should we forgive? And it's like,
Now, to be fair, I think most pastors don't preach on forgiveness well enough.
no.
I think when they're talking about forgiveness, they don't tell people what forgiveness truly is. Like forgiveness obviously is giving up the right to get even. I mean, justice is God's. But that doesn't mean that the person that you forgave gets access to you. It doesn't mean that the wrong is just gone.
Yep.
But I no longer feel the need to get back at you, get my revenge, or want ill for you because you're still a creature created in the image of God, just like I am, and you're imperfect just like I am. So why am I holding myself above you?
Well, I have this book on the history of the Amish, and like throughout it, there's different, like, because it's like a historical and different episodes where, like, Amish people have been killed and in modern times, and the overwhelming Amish community, like, actually reaches out and contacts the family of the killer and brings them to eat with them and to
Mm-hmm.
like just overwhelming acts of kindness, like praying for them and like actually doing what Jesus said you're
Yeah.
supposed to do. Like it just such like it hit me like, holy shit, this is exactly what actually Jesus said. And the funny thing is that um they were interviewing, then it has like where they interviewed an Amish woman and said like there was like outrage in the community, like, how could you, what do you mean, these people should be put up for,
Yeah.
for trial. And she was like, I'm just doing what like a Christian's supposed to do. I don't even know like what, like that's just what Christians are supposed to. But this
Yeah.
community are supposed to be Christians. That's the funny part, is that all these people are supposed to be, and they're all like absolutely sure that these people should be, immediately tried, and 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 I'm not even making a judgment whether they should or not. I'm just saying
Yeah.
like questioning that these Amish people are out of their mind by doing, like, have you read your Bible? Like it says exactly that to do that thing.
Yeah.
It's almost like the Christian community be like, yeah, but you're not literally supposed to do that. I mean, are these people stupid?
Yes.
Like
You are literally supposed to
you're
do
kind
that.
of supposed to, like have some sympathy for them, but like the turn the other cheek. I've had Christians say that's like if someone insults you and you just don't say something, back, or it's like a water cooler argument, like so Jesus is saying if someone says you're a jerk and a asshole, you don't say something back. That's what he's talking about. He's not talking about, like physical violence, or it's like, again, that's explaining it away to fit your,
The most shocking thing you can
you
do when
know,
anybody wrongs you is ask them if you can pray for them.
yeah,
People
right.
don't
And
understand
that's what
how
it
to
would be
act,
after they hit you, literally. And yep,
and it's okay. Now,
yep.
5 years ago, I mean, I'm going to town.
Right. But right, and that's what I'm saying. It's giving up something that, and there's Christians that argue that that would be evil to allow someone to hit you and beat you and not, like how could you allow someone like especially, if it was someone, your friend or your family, that was attacked, and it would be evil to not retaliate, and then deliver justice. It's like, again, have you read your Bible? It says vengeance is the Lord's.
I tell my guys all the time,
It's just,
there are two types of people who are definitely not afraid of death, and I'm both of them: a veteran and a Christian. Because, I mean, I ain't died yet as a veteran, and I'm going home when I die as a Christian.
did you, what branch did you serve in?
Navy.
Navy. Okay. Well,
Expeditionary.
thank you for your service.
Well, thank you, sir.
I appreciate it.
That was many, many moons ago now. Feels
I
like.
want to ask you how long ago.
22 years ago, I enlisted.
Okay.
And it makes me feel older than sin.
Yeah, I somehow stayed out of the military. My dad was in the Marine Corps, but somehow I had enough of a plan that he was like, all right. But like, had I screwed up, probably because he was of the opinion, pretty much everybody should serve. And if
I
my
don't think it's a
brother
bad
got
route.
shipped off to military school,
Oh, Lord. Oh, I think we have been on for 3.5 hours.
wow.
It was
Yeah.
great conversation, though.
Yeah,
we
I
might have to do
appreciate
that
your time.
again.
Yeah, anytime you want to, I'm like, so I said, like, when you were talking about debate and stuff, like, I don't really know how to, like, I'll push back on stuff, like, but like,
No,
I'm
and
not
full
interested in,
full
I'm not
disclosure,
trying
I'm
to
super
debate
happy that
people.
it turned out as a conversation.
Yeah.
I'm always prepared to debate,
I hope you think I'm
but
like open to it's funny. There are times I feel like I'm almost like I talk to Christians and I feel like I'm almost defending the Christian point of view
yeah,
over. I've said that to my wife. Like it's like I feel like I might as well just like because I'll be arguing what I think is actually the Christian stance on something. Like
well, do not be bashful to shoot questions, and I'll shoot questions to you too. So,
yeah,
and
I think it's like but yeah, I'm coming at it just from like studying it from a historical point of view and like, but so like I'm always interested if you find things, that are
yeah,
interesting or new areas of study. And
I'm currently looking more into new technology finds with the Shroud of Turin. So I'll let you know what I find out there.
okay,
By the way, I don't care one way or the other.
yeah,
It has no bearing on my faith, but it'd be cool if it's real.
yeah, I haven't really done a lot of like into like relics and like, it's interesting, but like I think for me, like I just know there'll never be any like it would never be conclusive one way or the other anyway. So like,
You know what? Speaking of eschatology, then, this is what I'll say. I think when the world can see definitive proof that the resurrection happened, we got about 10 seconds.
then that's when Jesus is in the clouds.
He coming.
He's coming. Yeah, eschatology is fascinating because there's so much.
I can seriously sit 13 people in a circle and we can talk about it and we'll get 15 different theories.
Yeah. So yeah, I think kind of I think the New Testament is purposely not
Oh yeah.
completely clear on it, and that's why because again, people misinterpret things, but people have been poring over these passages for 2,000 years and
Yeah.
haven't really figured out So I think there's just key information not in there that, and like you were saying, Revelation, it like skips too. Like,
Yeah.
it's not in chronological order. So, and things can be interpreted in multiple, like this could be Jerusalem. It could also be, a second coming thing. It could, like people have even just debated, who is the whore of Babylon, like that's even been,
Yeah.
it's obviously Rome. Then people will say, oh, it's Jerusalem. And it's like, is it both? Like,
I'm just gonna let Jesus tell me when I get home.
right. It's who is, people are sure that the 666 is Nero, but then other people, then go another church father said it was like Titus, one of them, like.
Well, there's new textual variant too, because they found
Right.
in some versions it's 616.
Yeah, so right. So is that scribe like trying to knowing, is he messing with people or is he falling asleep?
It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
This is why I tell people eschatology is cool to talk about, but don't put all your eggs in the basket, because you are going to drive yourself insane.
Yeah.
Because if we were meant to understand it, somebody would have figured it out by now.
How about something easy like soteriology?
Yeah. God.
Even that. See, there's not one area that anybody really agrees on. That's what makes it interesting to constantly talk about. But
two of us pastors can sit there and talk about like Rahab or Isaac, whether those were Christophanies or whether they were theophanies. Right. Like it's just
yeah, and it's just like you can read it one day and then be like, oh, I'm pretty convinced, and then you read something the next day and it's like,
Well, that's the cool thing about the Bible is the words don't change. You change around the words.
Right. Right. And we're also trying to, even if even if you're reading the Greek, you still don't have really any, like, you would have to know in that culture what did that word exactly mean.
Yeah.
And even then, let's just say you transport it back to first century Roman, like wherever, Antioch or whatever, or you were like how would you know even how that author is always, like there's multiple, like we know even in English today, we can't agree sometimes on something that's on like social media.
Yep.
That somebody has said directly, like people twist the meaning and like, so
yeah, you don't find emotion in context.
Some ancient text from, like, but again, I think there is enough to get the
absolutely
balls, but it's
I 100,000% agree.
But that's because if Jesus would just come back, we wouldn't have time to constantly debate over the.
See, he wants deeper understanding.
Jesus' fault. So.
He's got a sense of humor. I mean, there's no denying it.
Do you think Jesus is he gonna do when in the New Jerusalem? Is he gonna do like Bible studies? Like, all right.
Ooh, that's a good question. That would be funny.
Get everybody like break into their own denominations, and he's like, all right.
This is where you got it wrong.
Think that this passage means, and he'd be like, "You're all wrong."
Oh, I'm gonna pray for that every day until I die. Now, I swear I will pray for that.
You're all wrong. It doesn't mean any of the above. This was actually an interpolation that was done by this guy.
It was just an inside joke, guys.
Yeah, it was like, this is not an original passage. I never authored or approved of this passage. So you people have been debating this for thousands of years, and I don't even care about it. Wouldn't that be great?
It would be awesome.
Like one of the most important passages,
But to us, maybe.
Now, this passage I do, and it'd be like some passage that everybody was like, why do we care about that passage? Like, the one about eating meats with people who invite you, Paul talks about like when you sit down, don't offend anybody and eat what they serve you.
Oh yeah.
It's like, that's the one that I cared about. All right. Well, I
Oh,
appreciate it.
I appreciate you as well. Yeah, can't believe we went 3.5 hours.
Yeah, that's
It
what
was
my
outstanding though.
wife says all the time. Like, you guys must have talked about everything. Now,
It's great. I love the conversation. I think anytime you get the opportunity to talk with somebody from even a slightly different perspective, it's a blessing.
yeah, yeah. I mean, any like area, like I do like looking at detail at certain parts. If that's something you're interested in,
Absolutely.
like I literally do like doing Bible studies because it helps me to make sense of it. Like.
Yeah. And
Like, so I don't care if someone's coming at it from a theological, or like,
yeah, my Friday Bible teaching this last week was on the fruits of the Spirit, but I also taught them in Greek
oh yeah,
because the a whole different meaning for some of the words.
yeah.
Like we
And
just think of simple things.
do you read Greek pretty well?
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm trying to brush up on my Hebrew because I'm taking my men through a Genesis, possibly Exodus Bible study, and very, very different things when you understand the Hebrew in Genesis.
Yeah.
Moreover than Exodus, but
a lot of idioms and stuff, right? And puns and
the entire crucifixion. Well, the entire story of Jesus shows up in the very first word of the Bible in Hebrew. If you break it down grammatically and symbol by symbol, it's pretty cool. But you can read it into anything you want. But that one's hard to deny.
is it as clear as Isaiah 53?
No.
We ought to talk about that next time.
No, you actually have to understand what the symbols themselves mean.
Yeah.
Because I mean they're basically character symbols that can have multiple meanings. But it does. It essentially spells out the Son of God is pierced through his hand, and is destroyed by his hand for our salvation. That's just Bereshit in the very first word. It's pretty cool. I might do a thing on that and put that out there. But tonight I'm gonna get some sleep because I got church at 9:30.
Need everybody to punch. All right, have a good night.
Thank you,
morning,
buddy.
Actually,
well, you know what? It's the same thing. Sleep isn't that important.
That's right. You've got what'd you say? You've got a few kids, huh? So,
yeah, I got 3 of them. So
are they younger? No,
15, 7, and 3.
Okay, yeah. My oldest she's in college, so she just went off to.
Man, I can't wait till they're gone. I'll miss them, but I can't wait till they're gone now.
Especially at certain moments.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, when are you graduating?
About 15 years. I got 3 years for one and 15 on the other, so they're reciprocals.
Yeah.
Well, all right, Chris. Thank you very much. Is there anything I can pray for you for?
Nah, I've got it all.
Well, I'm gonna pray for you in my spare time then. Thank you, buddy.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is going to conclude our night. Thank you, everybody that tuned in. That was a great conversation. I loved it. And we will be doing this again. We will see you later. If I can figure out how this goes.